Thank you. Sorry to be late. We have just now returned from closed session where no action was taken, and we will now reconvene open session. We will now open the meeting. Very happy to introduce Martin Luther King High School Navy, JROTC Color Guard, for their presentation. Alyssa, come right up here. Hold the microphone down.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alyssa, do you want to stay up there for just a minute? Brent, I think you have something to say.
Yes, thanks, Alyssa. Here's a little bit about Alyssa. John Adams Elementary is proud to have Alyssa Reboledo representing our school and community. We are thrilled to have her leading the pledge tonight. Alyssa is a sixth grader in Mrs. Campbell's class and was recently voted by her class to receive an award for demonstrating respect and responsibility. Congratulations. Alyssa consistently treats others with high regard and exercises responsibility in her work ethic. Her classroom contribution includes management and organization of classroom Chromebooks and mentoring new students. She readily helps by training them on passwords and the use of educational programs such as Google Docs and presentations. I'm sure that'll make Mrs. Hill and Mr. Dunlap very happy. Alyssa performs these tasks with a ready smile and a friendly demeanor. You can see that too. Her goal is to become an obstetrician because she can't imagine anything better than bringing new life into the world. Alyssa is truly an asset to John Adams Elementary and her community. Let's give Alyssa a round of applause. And Alyssa, we do have a certificate for you, but I see you have some guests with you tonight. Did you want to introduce them?
Sure. Well, first of all, I have my father, Giovanni, at the end of the row, my mother, Lena, and next to her is my grandpa, Ed, and my brothers and sisters, Alexis, Lena, Aaliyah, and Gio.
Ah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alyssa. That was lovely. And now we have something unusual and unique to show you for group performance. Our USD high school ceramic students will provide a brief overview of their Empty Bowl fundraiser scheduled for Sunday, December 6th at the Art Museum.
Hello and thank you. My name is Sean Roll, and I'm the ceramics teacher at Martin Luther King High School. And my fellow faculty or members here, Dustin Smith from Poly High School, Elizabeth Waddell from Arlington, and Brett Mosier from Ramona. And I'm going to let the kids speak and let them tell you about it. And the first two speaking are Alyssa Medina and Jennifer Choi.
Hello. So, Empty Bowls is an international grassroots effort to fight hunger and was created by the Imagine Render group. The basic premise is simple. Potters and other craftspeople, educators, and others worked with the community to create handcrafted bowls.
Guests are invited to a simple meal of soup and bread. In exchange for a cash donation, guests are asked to keep a bowl as a reminder of all the empty bowls in the world.
Hello, my name is Bristol Plumville, and I'm a magnet student and advanced ceramics student at Ramona High School. This year, Ramona students have all come together to participate in the Empty Bowls fundraiser. At Ramona, all students have the opportunity to throw bowls on the potter's wheel. With the purchase of 12 new pottery wheels through LCAP funds, Ramona has 27 pottery wheels, allowing all of us to contribute to this amazing fundraiser. Throughout the district, students have come together to work in groups to create over 250 unique ceramic bowls that will be sold to raise money and awareness to support the Empty Bowls fundraiser. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Fernando Corona from Poly High School, and I am also an advanced Poly student in ceramics. And basically, I'm going to speak to you about glazing process and how we trim and how we glaze. And basically, we work in teams, and today we were set up in teams, and basically one person throws, the other person trims, and the other person glazes. And the glazing process is pretty simple. All we do is just get the bowl, just pass it over hand to hand, just glaze it, and pass it off and off to it's kind of like a conveyor belt. Just pass it to the next person in a team. And it's all a team effort, and we just work together. And also, myself and other students have been able to experience teaching, because we teach our other team members how to throw on the wheel, because sometimes they need help and we can help them out. So it's a good team effort, and we all learn from it. And also, it's basically it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Natalie Tapia, and I am the Vice President for our Arlington Mudslingers Club. And I'm here to talk about the proceedings about the Empty Bowls event. We'll go to the Feeding America's food bank. Feeding America Riverside/San Bernardino counties began in 1980 as the Survive Food Bank in response to the increasing concern of the dual problem of hunger and food waste in the Inland Empire. Presently, Feeding America Riverside/San Bernardino counties is the primary source of food for over 600 charities and nonprofit organizations, distributing over 2.5 million pounds of food monthly to places such as emergency food pantries, homeless shelters, soup kitchens, daycare centers, halfway houses, senior food programs, residential treatment centers, shelters for the abused, after-school programs, and to the group homes, etc. More than 400,000 men, women, and children each month rely on the food bank's distribution centers to make ends meet. So that's how our contribution goes towards. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vianney Lomelli.
And I'm Liam Ogala.
We are both commercial art students in Mr. Mugridge's class in King High School. In commercial art, we have marketing and advertisement for Empty Bowls. We all managed to create the logos, the banners, flyers, and such sorts like that to advertise to anyone interested. We also managed to sorry. We also managed to create all these other, like for example, the color schemes and everything of that for the event. Anything else, Liam?
We also have different groups where we coordinate the event at the place where it's being done. And we are also working on spreading the word on social media, like Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, and just spreading the word to people everywhere.
That's great. Thank you. Very beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. So we're looking forward to seeing everybody down at the Riverside Art Museum on December 6th, and that's a Sunday, to celebrate our Empty Bowl fundraiser. Thank you, kids. That was great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, teachers. Very nice. All right, now we have some special presentations. The first, this is Carmen Day. Okay. UCR presentation.
Just want to introduce, good evening, Board President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, esteemed board members. I wanted to have the opportunity to introduce our guest speaker tonight from UCR, University of California, Riverside, Dr. Thomas Smith. He is the Dean and Professor of the Graduate School of Education at UCR. He is also an Executive Director of the National Center on Scaling Up Effective Schools. It's a national research and development funded Institute for Education Sciences at the U.S. Department of Education. So we have our top presenter. I'm going to ask him to come up. He's going to be talking a little bit about what the teachers' shortage of the future beholds us, and then what UCR is working on to help supply the diverse need in the teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me this evening. It's very difficult to follow the ceramics students, but I'm going to try to do the best I can. How do I flip this up? Guess it could have worked. Is that
Okay. We're missing the...
Excellent. Love to see the bowls. All right.
Yes, blue.
Wonderful.
Blue. It'll be just a minute. We're trying to find...
Oh, great. So I couldn't come and not start out with a little bit of marketing for UCR. So I brought you all a copy of the latest UCR magazine. And I just wanted to just mention briefly, because sometimes it's easy to forget, the UCR is one of the most ethnically and economically diverse research universities in the United States. For the last several years, it's been ranked number 2 in the nation by Washington Monthly on several areas that we're very excited about, including the social mobility of our students, our research, and our community service. And my own school, the Graduate School of Education, right now is ranked 76th in the country. I think we're poised to make a move into the top 50 over the next couple of years, but that puts us at about number 10 in California and ranked number 1 in the Inland Empire. But what makes our School of Education special is really its research mission combined with our teaching mission. And up here I've listed some of the areas in which our faculty are actively engaged in research, including reading acquisition, teacher quality issues, positive behavioral support areas, as well as work with families, with students with a range of disabilities, including autism. And I'm excited to announce that over the next several years, we're going to be making a big hire in the area of STEM teaching and learning, because we recognize that that's a really big an important issue across the nation, but particularly in the Inland Empire, in trying to figure out how to improve student learning, particularly with new standards coming into place. But the main thing that I wanted to talk about this evening is the challenges of the growing teacher shortage, both nationally and in California, and as I anticipate is going to hit the Inland Empire quite hard. You may have noticed in NPR a story that ran in March, repeated in the New York Times and in the Huffington Post, that there's a really growing challenge right now across the country in finding teachers. This is a graph that was published by the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. If I can get this laser to work. Yeah. Okay. So on the left, we have the number of teachers that are entering the field. And you can see that in 2001, 2002, we had parity in job offerings and the number of teachers coming out at about 30,000. Then, as we're sliding into the recession and have some of the fallout of coming back off of class size reduction, we see both the number of job offerings, which is in the checkered line, and the number of graduates exiting credential programs falling at about the same time. So it was only kind of at the worst part of the recession that the number of students exiting teacher credential programs was substantially above the number of jobs and really creating a big shortage area for us. Where the big problem is happening now is that across the state as well as across the nation, we're seeing an increase in demand for teachers. Part of this is because of looming retirements of baby boomers, but also interest in many counties across the state, and again reducing some of the class sizes that have been really growing. The challenge here is that we're not seeing any uptick in enrollment in teacher education programs. In fact, in the next year beyond what's put in this slide, 2014-2015, it was just announced that it's continued to decline, for another year. So what we're going to see over the next couple of years is as many as a gap of about 4,000 teachers in the state that are needing to be hired. And this is already a crisis in some fields. One of the things I want to just kind of note from UCR's perspective, even though our teacher education program is relatively small, that we've been kind of beating the odds in this area to where...
Dean Smith, Dean, can I...
Yes.
This board can turn around instead of the folks turning around. We're okay to do that.
All righty, thank you.
Yeah.
We were at about 100 during the range of the recession, and then kind of dropped towards the end. But we're back up to about 140 teacher candidates, the vast majority of them graduating with master's degrees along with their teacher education credential. But we all know that shortage is a bigger problem in some fields rather than others. And right now we see across the state that in special education, we have a shortage of about 45,000 students in 2013-2014, which made up about 25% of all of the special education teachers in the state. Math and science were the other two, major shortage areas, and these are likely to get to be even bigger problems in the next couple of years. These is kind of the current production in the state of California. We see that about half of the teachers that are produced are elementary teachers, and that across the universities we produce about 12 of the teachers in STEM and about 10% in teacher education. I'm proud to say that at UCR about 20% of our teachers are in STEM, but we're actually really struggling to recruit teachers that want to go into the special education field. And this is an area that we need to work on on the recruitment side, and we're kind of trying to work on our programs to make them both more attractive to students, but also train them for the difficult jobs that special education teachers have. And that's an area where I'm hoping that kind of through collaboration with this district and others in the area that we can really make some headway. The racial ethnic distribution of teachers in California is also much more inclusive of teachers of color than it's been in the past. Whereas in the typical classroom you have a white teacher with a class full of students of color. Now just about half of the teachers produced in California come from backgrounds of color, and at UCR we're up about 2/3 of our teachers. Okay. One of the things, though, is in thinking about this kind of looming teacher shortage, it's going to be very difficult to kind of plug this hole by focusing on hiring more teachers alone. And so I wanted to just talk for just a moment about some of the challenges around teacher retention. We find that before the recession, about 4 out of 10 teachers would turn over in the first 5 years, and that during the recession, those proportions got even worse. So you bring in a new teacher, they go through the teacher induction program. That might cost $15,000. Districts invest in other forms of training, and by the end of 4 or 5 years, at least half of those teachers have left the profession. We find that the major reason that teachers report after they leave is kind of dissatisfaction with what they found in their school, either in the climate, the opportunities that they have for kind of control over what happens in their classroom, or their opportunities to influence what's going on in their school. Only some of it is about pursuing other jobs, family or personnel reasons, and some people think that the vast majority of teachers that leave, and this is at the end of the first year in this chart, are because somebody decides that they're kind of not up to the job, and that actually ends up being a relatively small number of teachers that leave the profession. So I just wanted to kind of close with some of the things that research that I've done myself, as well as my understanding of research in the field, suggests a little bit about kind of this balance between teacher quality and retention. One of the major issues is that content knowledge alone doesn't necessarily lead to high quality teaching. This has been really borne out in some of the alternative certification programs, and the idea that if we could just get people who majored in math or have master's degrees in math in all of our classrooms, our problems will all be solved. But one of the challenges is that the more students have kind of gone through these content level degrees in universities without kind of the teaching or pedagogical training, is it reinforced these ideas of teacher-centered instruction, and they may have not really experienced the kind of student-focused, inquiry-oriented problem-solving activities that are both called for in the Common Core standards, but also that most of us want to see in our children's classrooms. And that's not to say that content knowledge isn't central. I think it is at the center, but that high-quality teacher training is also important. Particularly as kind of BITSA has been up in the air over the past few years, I wanted to point out that kind of national research really does suggest that mentorship by a teacher in the same grade level in the elementary grades or in the same field is really one of the strongest predictors of teacher retention. Having somebody you can go to talk to about both what's going on in your classroom as well as what's going on to your content ends up being very predictive. Teacher professional development. The research suggests that it be content-focused, ongoing, and tied to the curriculum or what teachers are trying to accomplish in their classrooms. That sounds logical enough, But for so many reasons, what ends up happening is we have funding for a workshop or funding for an after-school professional development that may or may not be tied to what the teachers are trying to do in the classroom and isn't supported on an ongoing basis so they can develop around what they've learned. They show that teachers who actively participate in professional development are often teachers who will stay in the profession if they find it of great value. One of the biggest challenges that we have across the country is that the greatest places of need for new teachers are in the greatest schools of need. These are the ones that might have the lowest levels of achievement, some of the highest levels of poverty, and maybe some of the greatest challenges of climate. That's where the teaching jobs also tend to be, and school districts in very rational ways put new teachers into those jobs. And it can be a real challenge because those initial peaks at the profession are often really influential on whether or not somebody stays. And finally, there's a big kind of challenge in kind of the teacher retention literature between accountability, which we all want, both for student learning and for a range of other reasons, but that oftentimes teachers really value the autonomy that they might have to do things beyond just a curriculum. And, the balance between the two can have a big impact on retention in the profession. And that's all I have. And I'd love questions.
Thank you. There are some questions. Mrs. Lockdawson.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I'm really glad to hear an update on these things. It's something I think our board really needs to know as we move forward with hiring and training. And I think you probably know, as you've worked with Dr. Hansen, a lot of our new professional development is addressing just those issues. So. Yes. I did want to point out, though, something Dr. Smith did not say is that he is also a consumer of our educational services, and he has 2 children who are in RUSD, and his wife is very active also as a volunteer. So he knows what he's talking about.
That's great.
Thank you.
That's great. Are there any other questions? Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Dr. Dean Smith. I appreciate you being here. Because it is the political season, some of us have been in forums lately, and we get asked what we think is the most pressing concern for RUSD, and I have said that I think the coming teacher shortage and the need to change our culture from a baby boomer culture to one that you're talking about as millennials, where they want not so much bosses, but they want mentorships. And something, Dr. Hansen, that we used to have, and members of the board, and we don't have, I found out, we need to re-explore, as Corona Norco does have, is work sharing. Because millennials, the ones I've talked to, including Mr. Lee over there, is they are very interested in avoiding what their older brothers and sisters went through with losing their homes and grabbing too much of the brass ring. They want a quality of life. And do y'all talk about that much, about the type of culture that they're looking for in a workplace?
To some extent. There's been kind of discussion of whether or not kind of new teachers entering this generation are really different, from prior teachers. And that part of what this initial retention issue might really be related to kind of churn that much of the millennials kind of go through in trying to figure out what is that first thing that they want to do. And so that there may be more sampling going on now than in our generation when we were coming up through school. One of the things in the kind of Teach for America literature, where Teach for America gets a really bad rap, is that a lot of the teachers only come in for 2 years and then they leave districts. But we often find that kind of throughout the profession, many young people coming in are really only kind of testing it out to see whether or not this is a really good fit for them, and that their talents are being used, and that they feel efficacious in the classroom. And if they don't find that in the first couple of years, they move on to something else, and then necessarily feel tied to the job or the profession. And I think that part of what we're seeing in California and across the nation is related to teaching not having the aura of being a stable job or position as it was beforehand. During the recession in many places in California, large numbers of teachers, with 5 or fewer years of experience, we get a pink slip every April, and 80% would get invited back in August, and this cycle happened every year for about 5 years. And now the image of the profession is something that goes from unstable, or from stable to unstable, and I think that's a big issue that we have to kind of fight back on.
Thank you, sir. And,
Sure.
and could we have a copy of your slides?
I believe there's one on your desk, sir.
How quick do you? Thank you.
Okay, are you done, Mr. Hunt?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Great. I have a question regarding whether or not you think California is in a more serious place than other states might be across the country. It's kind of understood that we have a lot of we have a tougher credential to get and tougher hoops to jump through, maybe than some other states. Do you think this is going to be particularly hard for California going forward?
Well, I think that it is going to be particularly difficult for California, as much for the reasons that you mentioned, which I think are all real and valid reasons, but also California is a state where the number of students is growing at a faster rate than the national average. It's not slowing down as in other states, and that's going to create an increased demand for teachers that we're having a challenge on the supply side.
I see. Good. Anybody have any further questions? Okay. Well, go ahead, Mrs. Clark.
I came across that personally, the difference in credentialing from one state to another. And in medicine and in teaching, California is probably the toughest one to get a credential in that can be used or in another state or vice versa. Do you have any influence in the teacher credentialing commission, and are they really in touch? Because some of the hoops we have to jump through are directly related to the kinds of things they regulate. Do you have any sway with them?
Well, I don't know if sway is exactly the right word, but
Influence,
as a collaborative of deans, both in the University of California, the Cal States, and in the privates, we meet, with the Teaching Commission, with Tom Torlakson, with others, and this is an issue that the state recognizes, is a big problem. And I think they also recognize that, say in special education, for example, where I think the issues related to certification, are quite high in the state compared to others. And as many as 50% of the new teachers entering into the classroom are interns, which basically means they don't have the preparation, prior to entering the classroom, and most of the support for their learning has to be provided by the districts in which they're situated, and then they'll be taking classes, on top of that. And while I think the state's done a lot to make those reasonably good experiences for students, it ends up being really costly, for districts to run large programs with interns, and it's not clear that the students always get the kind of support that they need. So this is information that we keep pushing up to the state level. They're encouraging all kinds of experimentation in programs, even trying to move back, towards, can we get more four-year degrees that combine, a content area with a teaching credential, which, California's been out of the business of, for quite some time. But then we're moving in an era where new and innovative things are going to need to happen.
Well, keep helping them try to think out of the box. Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you very much. Mrs. Garmondet.
Good evening again. We have a second presentation for one of our exceptional STEM students. So I'd like to introduce Dana Rupert and Councilman Melendrez to introduce this student and provide her with her recognition.
I'm back. Good evening. Board President Alavi, Superintendent Hansen, and members of the board. I am Dana Rupert, California Association for the Gifted past president and current secretary. And I'd like to bring forth Abigail Medina, who is the CAG Joshua Tree Regional Rep. And she currently serves on the Board of Trustees for the San Bernardino Unified School District and is a candidate for the 40th Assembly District. And Krista Landgraf. Krista? She's also on California Association for Gifted State Education Chair, and she's an elementary teacher in Chino Valley Unified School District. Now, we are very honored. This is one student in the entire state who is recognized for this award. I wasn't on the committee. This is Nora Elhams. Nora, would you come forward, please? Why don't you stand over here, okay? Nora is from the STEM Academy, and she's here with her parents and lots of family members. Would you all stand, please? Lots of family members. Hey, there we are. We also have Dale Moore, the STEM Academy principal. Where's Dale? Jennifer Higgins, who's a referring teacher. Jennifer, come on up. Where's Jennifer? Okay. And Kim Coons-Leonard, Riverside Unified Gate Instructional Specialist. Okay. And Jen Harper, who's the treasurer of California Association for Gifted. Thank you, Jen, for coming from Rialto. Okay, all of you should have a handout, I'm hoping, on this award. It looks like this with some blue lines on it. Anybody need one? Okay, there you go. That's it. All right. I'm going to just highlight some of the reasons here why this award is so prestigious. And then we'll give the certificate and the $250 scholarship award to Nora. And then Andy Melendez, who is our city councilman, will also have an award. Not to you, Andy, you're giving it, right? Okay. The National Association for Gifted started this Nicholas Green Distinguished Service Award in 1996 by Reg and Maggie Green from Bodega Bay, California, in honor of the memory of their 7-year-old son, Nicholas, who was killed in a drive-by shooting while visiting Italy in 1994. The Greens donated about $15,000 for each state to have an opportunity to recognize an outstanding student. And then in 2005, another $5,000. So now what happened is, unfortunately, the funding has run out, and each state then could pick up on it if they so pleased. Well, obviously, California Association for Gifted is going to continue this award, and so this is what's happened right now. So we are going to award this special certificate to Nora Elhams. And I'm going to ask my colleagues to come forth.
Well, congratulations. I have a certificate for you made out to you. It's signed by both our current president and our past president. Signature for you. So congratulations, my dear. Very good. And this is the lady you want to see.
And this is where you actually want, you're very excited about. It's $250 for you and your studies. Congratulations.
Well, congratulations, Nora. Nora is a wonderful example of a STEM student who obviously excels in science and math, but she's able to, what makes her exceptional is she's able to apply those STEM strategies of questioning, research, creation, innovation, iteration into the humanities and into the community. She's a gifted reader, writer, and speaker on top of all the wonderful science and math, and that's really what sets her apart.
Mr. Melendez, would you like to do your presentation?
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much to the Riverside Unified School District Board for the invitation, Dr. Hanson, as well as the principal at the STEM Academy, Principal Moore, and all the rest of the staff. We have a certificate of recognition here for you, and the mayor and the council thought that it was important that we share this with you because of the exceptional job that you have done. This is a certificate of recognition, whereas a $250 scholarship will be awarded to STEM student Nora Elhams by the Nicholas Green Foundation, and whereas this award is distributed through the California Association for the Gifted to one California student in grades 3 through 6 who has distinguished him or herself in academics, leadership, or the arts. And whereas Norma Ilhams is hereby recognized for her admirable education, commitment, and wish the best as she continues on academic voyage and life path to seize your destiny. Therefore, on behalf of the City Council and our Mayor, we pay tribute to Nora, and on behalf of our Mayor and myself, Councilmember Melendez, we say congratulations for your fine work.
Okay, Ms. Nora, would you like to give an acceptance speech?
I hope she's prepared.
I would like to thank the California Association for the Gifted for recognizing me with these awards, as well as my family for all of their support, especially my stepmom. And I would also like to thank the Riverside STEM Academy, especially my teacher, Mrs. Higgins, for all of their support and encouragement for the past 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're indeed proud of lots of things that are going on in Riverside Unified, and this is just one example of the fine, outstanding students there are in Riverside Unified School District. Is it possible to get a quick picture?
Yes, it is.
All
Yes,
right,
it is.
all right. Thank you. Kathy, would you come up?
Many congratulations, Nora. That's a really special award, and thank you all for coming and giving that. That's a really nice thing. All right, Mrs. Carmen Diaz. Oh, I'm really goofing it up today. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, good evening, Mrs. Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Terry Boykins, who's the CEO of Street Positive, a youth advocacy and parent engagement organization that's focused on the emotional and economic needs of underserved communities. Last month, Mr. Boykins hosted Daughters' Lives Matter as part of the nationally acclaimed Million Father March campaign. He is currently engaged in partnerships focused on poverty diversion, mental wellness, and male emotional needs success through his organization, Street Positive. Today, he's here to present an award to one of our outstanding employees, Ms. Susana Zamudio, who has been working in the district for the past 19 years. She is currently working at the Family Resource Center as Coordinated Family Services Supervisor, and I'd like to ask Mr. Boykin to please come on up.
Good evening, Board. Superintendent Hanson, President Alive, how are you?
Hey, I'm good.
As a West Coast organizer of the Million Father March, each year we take the initiative to recognize a specific category of fatherhood. And I think the last time I was here, we actually had a whole stage full of baby items and supplies, which Susanna had been very instrumental in basically reaching out to a very underserved population of teen fathers. And what happens when teen fathers are confronted with issues of becoming young parents and making the decision whether or not they do continue their education or do they pursue other opportunities to economically provide for their children. And Susana Zamudio made an incredible impact, not only with that particular event, but also sending a very significant message to the role of daughters and the role that fathers play in the lives of daughters. We're so often confronted with the issue of young men being led by their fathers. Oftentimes we have the daughters that are left out. And so as a part of the Million Father March and Street Positive, Susana Zamudio has ignited, literally ignited around the country, women who have seen what occurred here with 6 women who were recognized as significant advocates for fatherhood importance and fatherhood engagement. That has resulted in 43 cities around the country with women and Daughters' Lives Matter in a campaign that is on track to raise $20 million by next Father's Day to support the role that fathers play in the lives of their daughters in 3 distinct categories: education attainment, victimization prevention, poverty diversion. We are suggesting that fathers have the capacity and the responsibility to ensure that their children, particularly their daughters, are educated, that they are safe, and they are economically sustained. And so, with no further ado, on behalf of Street Positive and the Million Father March, we would like to present this recognition of fatherhood, importance, and engagement to Ms. Susana Zamudio. Susana? We'll show it to the board and then we'll look around here, but this is on the 19th day of September, which is when we actually had Daughters' Lives Matter, for advocating fatherhood importance in the lives of children and community throughout the Inland Empire. So, Susana, we definitely appreciate you and what you have done, and we know as a daughter, your life does matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then, of course, it would not be complete if you did not receive the Daughters' Lives Matter. I don't think you got your shirt. If not, you get to get another one here. And so this gives her a chance to wear the Daughters' Lives Matter t-shirt.
Excellent.
And then we'll get the right sizes for the whole family if we need it. So,
thank you.
And so congratulations once again. And we'll have to hold this up here.
You want to say something about the program?
it's very difficult for me to always be recognized with this because I don't do it for that. I have, for those that really know me, know that I have a passion to help. I have a passion for families. When I deal with families every day, one of the things that I see is the lack of father in the home. When I see young girls, daughters, and their dad is not there, I say, you need to go to college. You need to finish. You don't know what's going to happen, if you're going to have a good husband, or he may get sick, or something, and you need to be educated. You need to go to college. You need to be, that way you can be self-sufficient. Hopefully they will have, meet their husband in college, and then they will have a beautiful life and kids into this world that we do need families together. Unfortunately, we do not have that a lot. We have a very huge percentage of single moms that are struggling with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 kids in our district, and that is very sad for me because the father, it is important. And when we did this last year here, it was like 110 degrees, but the fathers were, here to support, and especially young 16, 17, 18-year-olds that are being dads. They need to know the importance of being there for the family. So thank you. I accept this award with a great honor. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Very impressive. Thank you. And now we have reports by our high school representatives, and it's been a little late tonight. Sorry, guys. We're going to start with Eric Manavong from Martin Luther King High School.
Good evening, Madam President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and members of the board. I am here to inform you of all the wonderful things that has happened here so far at King. I would like to first start off with all our athletic achievements. I am very proud to announce that our girls tennis team is the league champions, being undefeated at a 10-0 record, and our girls golf team are co-league champions and went 9-1 in league and overall 14-3 for the season. I would like to honor the 3 girls that have made all-league: Lauren Laraga, Morgan Schertzma, and Rebecca Hawes. Although our varsity football team did not make playoffs, we were proud of them for how far they've came this season. We will be rooting for them next year when the season comes up. Boys cross country is undefeated in league so far, and they are ranked number 4 in the state of California. Girls varsity volleyball is 12-11 overall and is 6-3 in league and have made playoffs. Since it was the month of October, we all know it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Throughout this month, we have been encouraging students to wear pink and show their support by making donations. The week of October 6th, King had their annual Breast Cancer Awareness Game, with our student section, the red zone, becoming the pink zone for that one night. Many students came out to support the boys as they played a tough game against Centennial High School. Throughout that week, we, ASB, came up with many ways for students to donate towards breast cancer research. Some of the ways were selling pink beads, bracelets, tattoos, and mini footballs. On October 4th, we had our ASB students walk around during third period into classrooms and ask for donations. Within that week alone, we collected donations and received our goal, raising $3,500 that is going towards the Susan G. Komen Foundation. With many students donating, we are proud of them for supporting important research. On October 14th, sophomores and any other student who signed up for the PSAT took this practice test, which took place during periods 1 through 4. Students had a chance to look at what the real test would look like. On Thursday, October 29th, marks the end of our quarter, so many teachers had exams ready to make sure that the students learned what they needed to within the quarter. Lastly, this past week was Red Ribbon Week for drugs and alcohol awareness. We passed out red wristbands to all the students on the campus to advocate against drugs and alcohol. We decorated the school with posters and signs that contain the information about what drugs and alcohol can do to you. Since this is a Spirit Week, that means we have dress-up days. These days started off with Jersey Days, then to Boot Day, to Mix and Match Day, Hawaiian Day, and finally, like every Friday at King, we have Red Out Day. As you can see, this past month has been all about raising awareness for serious causes at King High. It's great to be King. Does anyone
That's
have
great.
any questions or comments?
Any questions for Eric? No, I think we're okay. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
A good report. Thank you. Christiane Fitch from Abraham Lincoln High School.
It's Jonah Lascano today.
Aha.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Okay. Good evening, Madam President Alavi, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. My name is Jonah Lascano. I am the student representative for Abraham Lincoln High School, and I am looking forward to serving as an alternate for this school year. I'm graduating with the class of 2017, and now I will share with you what the Lincoln Panthers have been up to. Both Lincoln and North went on a very exciting field trip to the Riverside Convention Center for the Economic Forecast Conference. This event was a very important learning experience for us. We learned how to keep an outstanding credit score, how to budget our money for college, as well as ways to stay out of debt. Our sports program started with an awesome softball season. Although we lost more games than we won, to our Lincoln athletes, it wasn't just about winning. It was about having fun and showing our Panther pride out on the field. One of our softball players stated that he enjoyed being part of the team. Why? Because we're family. Back to school night was a successful, extraordinary night. Not only was there an amazing barbecue food prepared by Mr. Darrell, parents received plants by Mr. Cardenas, and as well as, parents and teachers were able to bond because they both want an amazing life for our future. Many students showed their parents what their work is like on our new online learning. Our teachers and administrators are excited about our upcoming model continuation school validation visit this Friday. Their excitement makes us students excited too. We know that our school is great, and now everyone will know it too. We also went on a field trip to RCC on October 22nd, along with some EOC students. We had a lot of fun, and we also learned very important, cool, and life-changing things such as the cost of tuition. It made us feel like we can afford college. The most exciting part was learning about the different programs that offered, like nursing and art. This past Thursday, the Friday Night Live program sponsored a Halloween rally. It was the most fun I've had at school. Students and the staff had a costume contest and won a $10 Starbucks cards donated by Mr. Chokoya. We had a donut eating contest, pin the toe on the Purple Panther, popcorn, and cool music. We were inspired by the Friday Night Live coordinator who graduated from Lincoln and now gives it back to us. Thank you. This concludes my report. Are there any questions?
No, very good. I'm sorry I didn't get your name down there.
It's okay.
Okay. Mrs. Cloud.
I would just like to say I'm anticipating going out and visiting Lincoln soon. I haven't had a chance yet, but Lincoln's one of my, well, I guess I can't say favorites, but the atmosphere at Lincoln and the coherence at Lincoln and the improvements that have been made are just impressive. So a shout out to Lincoln tonight.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, Madison Hebert from EOC. No? Yes? There you are. I couldn't see you behind Mrs. Carmenday.
Hello. Good evening. This is Kathy Alavi, Board President, Dr. Hansen, District Superintendent, and board members. I will be representing EOC tonight, and my name is Madison Hebert. The first thing that I would like to talk about is our AVID program. Our AVID program and students went to UCLA for their football game, and they had a great field trip. Unfortunately, though, UCLA lost. Also, our AVID program has been implemented into Rain Cross, our continuation school, and it is one of the first continuation high school AVID programs in the state, which is very exciting news for us. Also, EOC held a meet and greet on October 2nd. We gave away prizes that were donated to us, such as a flat screen TV, and we had different agencies there, such as suicide prevention. EOC also had its disaster drill on October 15th and its first quarter district writing assessment from October 13th through the 15th for all of the 9th graders. We had an anti-bullying campaign, which I personally enjoyed. On October 5th through the 16th, we made posters and put them up in the cafeteria and on the board or the doors of our classrooms. RVS AP literature students are planning and hoping to go on a field trip to England next June. And while there, the students will be doing research and earning high school and college credit. Our school, Raincross, held parent-teacher conferences last week, and RVS will be holding theirs this Wednesday. Also, Raincross went to a 5-period day this year, and we have new electives. EOC has added Spanish 1 through 3, weightlifting, PE, the principles of game design, Cisco, MIT certification, and art. RVS is also having their mid-cycle WASC revisit this year. And for this meeting, I would like to highlight 2 amazing students from RVS. The first student is Daniil Shamus, and he is a Russian figure skater who competes nationally. And since he goes to RVS, he has time to practice and to go to his competitions. And the second student is Jada Hart, and she's going to be graduating early this year to go to UCLA on a full-ride scholarship to play Division I tennis. And she's in the top 1,000 in the country.
Wow.
And thank you for your time. Thank you for having me.
Mrs. Cloud, you had a question?
Well, I just want to commend you as well over at the EOC. I was over there the other day, and I can't tell you how exciting some of these alternatives are that meet the needs of students like Daniil and Jada, and you, obviously. So, and I would wager that Mr. Dietz is probably one of the few principals that teaches math as well as principles. And so, thank you. Thank you for the good work over there.
Thank you. And last but not least, Enrique Moreno from Arlington High School.
Good evening, Madam President Alavi, Superintendent Dr. Hanson, and all other board members. My name is Enrique Moreno, and I am the board representative for Arlington. In Goal 1, our student leadership class has taken the initiative to start a unique Student of the Month program. Each staff on campus may nominate a student to represent them for the month to honor academic excellence in the classroom. We are entering our 3rd month of the program and have individually honored 80 students for their spirit. Arlington Math 1 teachers are working to implement the 5 elements of personalized learning. Starting with the competency-based advancement and learner profiles, they are building online courses for students to move through the content at their own pace. While freeing up the teacher's class time to work with small groups, whether it be for intervention or enrichment, students are learning to drive their own learning through the use of skill trackers and effective feedback. In Goal 2, the Arlington Counseling Department is in full college and career focus. They held the College and Career Fair on September 30th. The evening was set up with workshops about financial aid, SAT and ACT testing, career technical education program, A through G requirements, and selectivity. And then the library was open for question and answers with college recruiters. As a follow-up, counselors have dedicated every Tuesday and Thursday to help students explore and apply for college in the College Lab. Our Media and the Arts Academy filmed and edited their pilot episode of their new television show, Access A-Town, under the director of Student Editor-in-Chief, Juan Ochoa, and Senior Media Arts teacher, Phyllis Coate. You can watch it on the AHS Media Arts YouTube channel. Our Visual and Performing Arts Department has been active in and out of the classroom. The Lions Den Theater players presented The Twilight Zone on October 28th through the 30th. The play highlighted 3 episodes and 2 comical commercials of the classic show. Our Golden Pride Band and Color Guard had an amazing season so far, taking first place at the Riverside King Band Review Mount Carmel Tournament of Bands in San Diego and Chafee Field Tournament in the past 2 weeks. Their success was highlighted today in the Press Enterprise. Following Dr. Hanson's goal of extending leadership to every aspect of the district, ASB hosted a Castle Leadership Day on October 20th to extend our student leadership outside the student government classroom. Advisors, coaches, and club advisors selected student leaders from 22 sports, 12 co-curricular groups, 28 clubs, and student leadership. The day focused on student leaders engaging our students authentically by making connections, reaching out, and showing others the way. Our student leadership attended the CARE conference on October 28th, which focuses on school culture and climate. We are currently debriefing and brainstorming ways to put the great ideas into action. Our advisor, Ms. Peffer, presented on the 3-year journey we have undertaken to reform the Lion culture. We continue to look for new ways to better utilize the powerful tool of HERO to track our student participation, and I personally have taken much of this responsibility. Our first students have reached 50 points and will be rewarded with the Lions Den t-shirt in the coming days. In the Lions Athletics, we hosted October Cancer Awareness Month with the full awareness campaign for all cancer and pink out games on October 8th and 16th with North. We raised just under $1,500 for Susan G. Komen Foundation. Our girls tennis team doubles team, Elia Rosado and Alyssa Turner, placed second in the Inland Valley League Finals. Our other teams finish up the league play this week, and many are looking at playoff potentials. Alumni Tiffany Dunlap was awarded the Junior Ladybird Award by Keep Riverside Clean and Beautiful for exceptional community service over the span of her high school years, and was honored at their annual luncheon on October 22nd. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Enrique. Are there any questions for him? Mr. Hunt.
I just want to compliment you and Eric King in Arlington for both of you reaching out to our young man who's in the hospital and joining with your prayers and your cheers for Polly. That shows that our USD is indeed one family, and the Lions and the Wolves are to be complimented on that. And your band is really great. I enjoyed y'all the other night. What I really was impressed with is that your student directs the band.
Oh, yeah.
From up there.
Thank you.
That was really cool.
Thank you. Mrs. Cloud.
I would just say, Enrique, it was a very interesting, excellent report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
you all did great tonight. Thank you for waiting it out. And you can go home and work on homework now. Thank you. Dr. Hanson, District Superintendent's Report.
Yes, thank you, Mrs. Alavi. And it was nice to look out and see so many visitors at our board meeting, to walk into the room and see it's full. It's nice to see so much support and interest in our school district. So thank you to the folks that are also at our board meeting this evening. And Dan and Rupert, it's always nice to look out and see you and to see that you're still out making a difference in kids' lives. And I'd like to congratulate Nora for that wonderful recognition that she received from the Gifted Foundation this evening, as well as Susanna for the recognition that she received. It's indeed, like Dana said, there's a lot happening in Riverside Unified. Matter of fact, as I continue my walkthroughs and class visits, had a chance to see much of what the students reported on this evening as the high school representatives. And last Friday, it's hard to believe it's already the end of quarter one. It came to an end last Friday, and here we're already 2+ months into it, and just a lot of things going on. Matter of fact, I'm pleased to inform you that after scoring consistently high on 5 separate reviews, Abraham Lincoln High School has been selected for a validation visit to become a California Model Continuation School. The visit is scheduled for this Friday, November the 6th, and is comparable to the recognition that comprehensive schools receive when becoming a California Distinguished School. An invitation was given to board members in the last board mail-out, and if you can come and join us this Friday, your presence would be appreciated. So congratulations again, like Ms. Cloud said, to the fine work that Pamela Michon and her entire staff are doing over at Abraham Lincoln High School. Also, RUSD has applied and has been selected as a Google Education participant, or selected by Google Education to participate in their Expeditions Pioneer program. And matter of fact, Google Expeditions will be visiting Hawthorne Elementary tomorrow, Liberty Elementary on Thursday, and Sierra on Friday. And I'd like Assistant Superintendent Renee Hill to tell the board more about what Expeditions Pioneer program is.
Google Expeditions is a virtual reality application. So they bring a set of goggles, if you've seen the ads for cardboard. They bring a set of goggles for up to 50 students. and those students can simultaneously be in one place in the world. So it's like being at a vista point, and all of the students can see something that the teacher or guide is narrating. So if you think about students who don't have background knowledge, for example, about the ocean. We have some students who've never been to the ocean. They could be diving in the Galapagos with their teachers. They could see the Great Wall of China. They could be on Mars. So only a few places are getting to have Google Expeditions, and we have 3 of the few places.
That's exciting. Thank you, Ms. Hill. I'd also like to, I know that many of you have received this at home, and perhaps you have questions, a nice bringing out the best, talking about Riverside Unified that was sent to every household within our school district. And I'd like to invite Dr. Lewis to share with the board and remind the board about the purpose of this flyer that went home and continues to show up at our homes throughout this next week.
Mrs. Alavey, Dr. Hanson, members of the board, as you know, this item, this flyer I've been tracking this for you in our regular updates that I've been sending to you about the progress of our bond exploration process. This document is really meant to be one of our first outreach efforts for this fall. And what it really does is it sends a message to our voters in the school district about the successes in Riverside, your goals as a board, and the LCAP priorities. It also it was reviewed by our bond team members, our PIO, our board communications subcommittee, so we wanted to be sure we touched on all the real important aspects and the features of Riverside Unified. So this is a first step in our process of keeping the voters informed of good things that are happening in Riverside, and we'll capitalize that all the way through the process.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis, and I'd like to also give our Chief Academic Officer, Mrs. Lynn Carmody, a moment to give an update on the things that are happening in Ed Services.
I just wanted to make mention of a couple of other opportunities for our community to be engaged. You know the CAC, the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education. Well, they are sponsoring a fair, a resource fair, November 7th, this weekend from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So that's pretty exciting, first time. There will be different kinds of exhibitors there, one for like an arts program, behavioral sciences will have representation, advocacy, legal advocacy will have representation. There will be quite a few different opportunities for families, support groups. We'll have a table there. So lots of opportunities, something new for us, and very much engaging our families who have special education students. Very exciting. The other event that I wanted to talk to you about is called our Plus Council, our very first initial meeting. If you recall last year, Woody Rutger Hughes came and did a presentation for us that was pretty dynamic about the contributions of African Americans to the history of America. And since that time, there's been some dialogue about how to engage those families. And as an extension of the Heritage Program, we have put together a Plus Council, and we will be providing you a more thorough presentation about that in December, but I just wanted to let you know that we will be having our very first meeting, and it's Tuesday, November 10th, so a week from tomorrow at Central Middle School, and we right now already have 100 families who have RSVP'd, so you're welcome to come at the opening and see that event. The last thing I just wanted to mention is last Wednesday, we did have a school, family, and community partnership collaborative, and it was at our Family Resource Center, and it brought a lot of different agencies in our community together to talk about what are some of the one-day resources. So it just shows, one, that's an amazing center. I know there's been an interest by the board to have a presentation that will also take place in December, but it was a really great event. I wanted to let you know that as we continue through the year and have more and more presentations, our goal is to present on all of the needs in the LCAP and the goals, so that by the end of the year you'll have heard the majority of information behind each of our goals, instead of doing it all at a study session at the end of the year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Carmody and Dr. Lewis and Mrs. Hill. And I also thank Dr. Dean Tom Smith for coming this evening from UCR and talking. And you'll be interested to know that I have a lot of neat opportunities I get to do to serve as your superintendent. And just last week and a half ago, I had a chance to attend Urban Education Dialogue. And that is the 20, give or take one or two, largest school districts in the state of California coming together, the superintendents, and discussing issues they're facing urban education. And it just so happened, it's a small group, 20 to 24, and the whole time, and guests come in. And Dr. Michael Kirst, our state board president, was there, and I sat with him those 2 days. And one of the agenda items was on the teacher shortage. And Dr. Kirst talked about the state board reaching out to teacher credentialing and other organizations to try to make the credentialing process a little bit more easy for us here in the state of California. So there's a lot of people working on that at a lot of fronts because of the shortage. The number that I heard was that for the next 5 years, 21,000 teachers the state of California will be looking for, so 100,000 over the next 5 years. And so it is a great concern of all of us is how we can attract and retain high-quality individuals to this profession. And then last, and certainly not least, and I just heard Mr. Hunt make mention to that, but as you know, 2 Fridays ago, one of our students, Josh Nava from Pauley High School, was injured during a football game, and he's still recovering at Riverside Community Hospital. But I just wanted to send a message to everyone from his family who I have had a chance to meet with on several different occasions, and they say, Josh is still recovering, and the family is extremely thankful for the outpouring of support we have seen from the Riverside and the Pauley community, and we ask for the continued support and prayers for our son Josh in this tough time. That concludes my report.
Thank you very much. We are now here to public input, and we do have someone who'd like to speak to the board. If I could have Miss Tanya Campbell come up. And you do have, oh, yes, hi, come on up. 3 minutes, and we'll start when you're ready, okay?
Hello, everybody. I'm a parent, and the School of Choice policies and open enrollment is about to open, and I'm requesting that the board review its policies and procedures. 2 years in a row, my daughter's been denied her school of choice. And in reviewing the policies and procedures, I would like you guys to look and clarify. In your policy 1, it states that enrollment options are provided to all students within the RSD, Riverside Unified School District that meet the diverse needs and interests of district students. And are you looking to meet students' educational needs, or are you guys looking to meet district needs? Because it also states that parents and guardians of any student who resides within district boundaries may apply to enroll their child in any district school, regardless of the location or residence within the district. I reside closer to a school of interest, and my daughter is sent to a school that's farther from my home. I've had email correspondence with the Director of Pupil Services, and he stated that even though children are denied their school of choice and they reside within the RUSD school boundaries, RUSD employees that reside outside the district and other children that reside outside the district are accepted for their school of choice. And he also stated that you guys take into consideration RUSD's employees' child care needs. And as a parent who pays 3 times their mortgage to live within RUSD and bought a home, I would think that my child care needs are just as relevant. So it does make sense. You guys, as the Board of Education, said that you value diversity, and is that a true reflection of diversity when RUSD employees are given priority over children? And all children should matter, not just RUSD employees. And on the application process, it asks if you're an RUSD employee, and I don't think that should be relevant. It should be all children should be considered the same. Also, student learning, it says that you guys value student learning. My daughter was sent to a school, her home school, and 30 days within the school year, they're facing overcrowded issues. So is that a true reflection of valuing student learning when my daughter has to go to her home school and deal with overcrowding issues, when the school that's closer to our home, she was denied that choice? So I'm asking that you guys review the policy, take into consideration all children, not just your employee children, or also why are the children of RUSD competing for a school of choice with someone that lives outside the district? And thank you, guys.
Thank you, and we'll have someone follow up with you. Thank you so much. Right. Mr. Hutt reminds me appropriately that we cannot discuss anything that's not on the agenda, but we will have someone follow up with you. Thank you. Okay, now we are at our district employee group reports. Let's start with our RASM presentation by Mr. Victor Cisneros.
Good evening, Board President, Mrs. Alavi, Superintendent Dr. Hanson, and members of the Board. RASM is currently working on the following items. We're preparing our AXA Awards nomination and are very enthusiastic and excited to send those nominations off to the region in all the categories if possible. There's about 17 categories in which we can send nominations. In the upcoming week, we'll be sending out a request for nominations for AXA's Every Student Succeeding Award program, and we are looking forward to the amazing and powerful stories that we get to see that come along with these nominations from all across our district. Only one student is selected for this award per region, so we're Region 19 for Riverside County. Only one student gets selected, and we hope we put forth one of the nominations that gets selected. Additionally, we're working on a tri-charter event with RAXM, which is the Western Riverside County Association of School Managers, and the Corona Norco Managers Association. We've done this event before, about 2 years ago, but we'll send you more details upcoming. Some great news, our managers continue to represent RASM and our USD very well. Just recently, a few weeks ago, Don Smith and Bernie Merez were showcased on AXA's Region 19 and AXA's social media page for expressing how they loved being a school administrator. They were selected based on what they expressed on social media. And the sentence starter was, how do you love being a school administrator? They were both selected and had to take a selfie with a sign that said, I lead, and AXA's logo on there. This Friday, our CBO, Mayska Keish, will be receiving her award in recognition for AXA's Business Service Administrator of the Year in Sacramento. And although she received the award in a different district, we will be there to support her and take part of the credit. Thank you.
Absolutely. We'll take credit. Thank you so much. And now an RCTA presentation by Mr. Tim Martin, President of the Riverside City Teachers Association.
Good evening. Last week when I was at a CTA State Council, a CTA director told me it must be good to be in Riverside. During that same weekend, NPR had a segment with the title, Hey New Teachers, It's Okay to Cry in Your Car. And then 2 days later ran another story, Teachers Respond, Veteran Teachers Cry in Their Cars Too. I'd like to speak to both. Here are a few of the reasons it is good to be in Riverside. First, the tentative agreement increasing district contributions towards health insurance and providing a fully paid quality health plan speaks to your commitment to all employees. RCTA ratified the TA last week with a 98% yes vote. Second, the dialogue that is occurring between the instructional services directors and RCTA directors on instructional issues is a promising new practice. Also, for most teachers in classrooms, this year's staffing has been very well done. Because of efforts in both personnel and business services, there were no class size waivers necessary at any elementary school, and of the 30 signed at secondary, all but 1 or 2 were for singletons like AP or honors. It has never been this good during my 6 years in this role. Finally, I would like to say the relationship RCTA has with district management and the school board is a positive one, which has a good impact on all of us. Thank you for making this a priority. While all of this is true about Riverside, there are still teachers who, at the end of the day, feel like crying in their cars. What can we do? Let teachers focus on teaching. One way to do that is to reduce the number of district assessments. President Obama addressed this same issue of too much testing last week, calling for a 2% maximum of instructional time devoted to mandated testing and assessments. At elementary schools and in some secondary schools, in some content areas, students can spend between 10 and 15 instructional days or classroom periods taking school-wide or district assessments. Why not make this the topic of discussion when the instructional services directors and the RCTA directors next meet to decide together which assessments are most important and ought to be given and no longer require all others? A second way is to reduce the number of required meetings. When IEP meetings, SST meetings, 504 meetings, BITSA meetings, and WASC meetings are added to the 30 staff and department meetings that can be held, most teachers are in a perpetual state of meeting overload. This does not include the many optional meetings teachers participate in for the good of their school, their department, or their students. Although teacher preparation time has increased 15 minutes over each of the last 2 years, the complexity and volume of district instructional programs and increasing reliance on technology requires much more of them than the extra planning time allows. Instead of 15 staff and 15 department meetings, could the business of the district and the school be conducted in 12 staff and 12 department meetings? I know that at a few schools, principals have already canceled some staff or department meetings. I'm sure teachers at those schools have appreciated the extra time to work in their classrooms and know this is a gesture of support on the part of their principal. Finally, help principals help teachers. All schools, all students, all teachers should have an effective, supportive principal upholding the work that is done in the classroom by having positive, professional relationships with teachers and creating an environment in which good teaching flourishes. Support those principals who do this. Help those who don't. Little else will make a greater difference in teaching and learning. Minimizing district assessments, fewer required meetings, and taking every measure to provide supportive and effective principals at all schools would go a long way towards reducing the number of new teachers who will quit after this year or next, and perhaps give veteran teachers enough breathing room to help their younger colleagues. And if this happens, kids win. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Good food for thought. I like it. All right, we are now here at the consent agenda portion of our meeting. Those items to be taken by the board in one motion. Is there any item that the board wishes to pull from the consent agenda?
Can I pull F10 and F13?
F10 and F13. Yes, indeed. Thank you. Are there any others?
If there are no others, I can make a motion to approve the remaining items.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Motions for approval of the other items on the consent agenda. Mr. Hunt seconds. Let's take those as one vote. All those in favor, please vote yes or no. Yes, that does pass. And now we will take item F10. Mr. Lee?
Just a question for staff. I recall when this item was discussed for one of the properties that we purchased that there was an appraisal of around $800,000. I was just curious to know when that appraisal was done, and now seeing this new appraisal at 1.23 F10, I think. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did we do the wrong one?
It's page 95. I might have wrote the number down wrong.
No, 95. It's F10. Okay.
This is resolution 16-24.
Okay.
It's okay. So I could have misremembered that 800,000, but that number seems to stick in my head. And being from a real estate background.
It was 880,000, Mr. Lee, and it was done when Dr. Beatty and I were on the facilities committee. So it's been at least, I think it's been 3 years.
Okay.
Dr. Lewis would like to speak any more to that?
Yes. When we submitted our request for this exchange property, typically what OPSC is familiar with is when we sell the property, they get half, but we had to go through an exchange process, as you know, as part of the purchase of Victorian Central property. During that process, they requested that we have a new appraisal done, and so this new appraisal of $1.2 million reflects that new appraisal. And Mr. Hunt is right. Originally, it was about $880,000 when we started this process about 3 years ago.
Okay. So when we discussed that previous appraisal, we were basing on information that was 3 years old?
I believe so.
Okay. Right. I think next time, I think when we're going to discuss values, it would be appropriate to have an updated appraisal, especially if we're making trades for property, because that's a big difference if we're basing a property on 400,000 or 440,000 versus 615,000. I don't know if that would have made a difference in the negotiation in terms of how much we gave up. So I guess with that, I just wanted some further information on that so I can lay that to rest.
Thank you. So you can motion for approval of that?
Yeah, move to approve.
Second.
And Mr. Hunt seconds. All those in favor of F10? It does pass. F13, Mr. Lee.
2 questions on this one. Staff has provided additional information prior to this meeting, but I just thought it was appropriate to discuss it, or at least have it on the record for this meeting. First wasn't previously discussed or previously mentioned, at least to my knowledge, was the boys varsity basketball team. I just noticed that on the checklist that they were asking for to be dismissed from school from December 9th through the 13th, but then the description of the agenda item said the 9th to the 15th. So I don't know if that matters, but I thought that when I saw the 9th to the 15th, that was a long time to be gone from school, but then I saw that really it's only about 3 days, so just that notation. And more importantly, the one for the retroactive approval of the Ramona High School Dynasty Band traveling to Las Vegas, Nevada to participate in a marching band competition. I'm all for experiences for students outside the school, especially for competitions. But I did just want some further explanation as to what the district's private purpose trust fund is, what the process is for accessing it, and who can access it.
Mr. Garcia?
Yes. That particular fund is a donation fund that the district has, where we have donations that we are able to utilize for these type of purposes. And so in this case, as we know, field trips that are out of state or out of country, we cannot utilize certain funds to pay for certain costs, particularly for students. And this is where this particular fund, we can utilize it because it's based on donations.
Mrs. Kakish, would you like to add anything else to that?
So one of the requirements, as you already know, is Ed Code doesn't allow us to use any district funds for students. And so when this particular request came after the fact, there was really not much we could do as far as supporting the trip or preventing any overages that had happened. But we can have control over not using the district's funds. So Fund 73 has accumulated a few donations from the past, not new money that came in this year, but has accumulated over the years donations from community for the use for students, and it's a very much a proper use for that. The only unfortunate thing that I think we're being put under is that the fact of the matter is that it came after the fact. There was no say, in a way, for us to make a decision on fundraising, additional funds, or anything with that regard. So as far as the district, that's really what the purpose is to support the schools, and I know our board priority is to support competitions. So the school has done a great thing by actually entering into this competition and out of state. I think it's just the part of planning where we needed to be engaged in to help them support the fundraising activities.
Mrs. Cloud.
I'm glad you asked that question. I was wondering, in my years here, I don't remember seeing that category, District Private Purpose Trust Fund. Maybe I haven't noticed it, but
It's Fund 73 in the district financial statements. I'm not sure if it was highlighted before.
I don't remember ever seeing it. So I was going to ask exactly what that is, Private Purpose Trust Fund. So we get donations from other groups, business groups, or whatever, and we hold it in a trust fund for the purpose of financing.
Some donations are specific, so we hold it for specific donations, and you're probably aware of some of the specific donations, and some donations are not so specific. And so it could say for leadership, it could say for students' activities, it could say, so this is using the funds that are flexible for student activities. But the fund has several almost like trust donations that are for specific use. And if you would like, I can send some information to the board about exactly the trusts. I think we mentioned it not too long ago in a finance committee.
Mm-hmm.
We went over some of those, but I'll be happy to share with the rest of the board the detail of the specific
Well, and
donation.
maybe some of the other uses, because honestly, I don't recall that particular fund, in any of our information. So yes, I would appreciate that.
Thank you. Mr. Hunt?
Well, thank you, Ms. Cloud, for asking. That's exactly what I wanted to find out, is that, Ms. Kadisha, I'm looking forward to that. I've never seen that either. I've always seen that the Rotary Club gave $500 for the kids to go to SeaWorld or whatever, but I've never seen it just $10,000 and use it as you want. We do need to know about that. It's usually a small amount, but trust has as many letters in it as slush, and we just don't want misunderstandings, and those are hangnail type things that happen. And I would also like to have you, if you would, during that report, let us know how the cellular tower funds are being designated. I know we get just under $100,000 a year from our cellular towers. How is those funds being used? Is there any recommendation that Dr. Hansen or you have for those funds, particularly as we begin to talk more about student field trips? I tell my board member, my fellow colleagues, I talked to Assistant Superintendent Garcia this week about this, and I think they're on the right track. I'm looking forward to a policy that the board can follow. I do think that a field trip like this, like any of the ones we just saw, is catching a teacher doing very good and teaching their students very well, and they're asked to go to something prominent. I mean, for Mike Barty to go play basketball in Canada, it's because North not only runs a heck of a fast break, but they're all fine young gentlemen, and they're very, very well represented. I believe that we should be paying for that official representative at the booster club. Some booster clubs, like the schools that in my district area, like Arlington, have a difficult time raising that kind of money, and then have some sort of, between X and Y amount that we can allocate to them, and they can decide to pay for assistant coaches or pay for half of assistant coaches, et cetera. But I'm pleased with what I heard from Mr. Garcia this week, and I look forward to it. But I would like to, additionally, know about those cellular tower funds. Thank you, Mrs. Alabi.
Thank you, and I think the board would like a breakdown on that fund. Thank you. Mr. Lee, are you willing to make a motion on this?
Move to approve item F13.
All right.
Second.
And Mrs. Cloud seconds. Please vote. That does pass. Thank you very much for that. And we are now moving along to our report and discussion on our RUSD technology plan.
Good evening. I'll bring this down. Good evening, President Alavi, Dr. Hansen, and members of the board. My name is Steve Dunlap. I have the pleasure of serving as the Director of Innovation and Learner Engagement here in RUSD. The purpose of the item before you this evening is to elicit board input concerning the use of technology in RUSD. and more specifically the instructional use of technology to enhance and enrich learning experiences in our classrooms. As you know, RUSD has been a leader not only in the state but across the country in terms of the instructional use of technology in the classroom for several years. Currently, we have about 25,000 devices in the hands of our students on a day-to-day basis. Our infrastructure is improving year to year, and we are continuing to offer more and more opportunities for our teachers to engage in professional learning opportunities around instructional technology. And while we made several advances in the last few years, there is still much work to be done and many things to improve. One of the ways in which we express these improvements and these needs for innovation is through our technology plan. And so this evening, what I'd like to do is to provide the board with a little bit of context around the RUSD technology plan, to provide you with an update around the need to write a new plan and the progress towards doing that. And then finally, what most importantly is really to hear from you as a board. This is your opportunity to provide some input as we move forward on a new plan for RUSD concerning instructional technology. So I'm going to provide you with some context, talk to you about a new plan, but really we'll spend most of our time actually hearing from the board this evening. So the first thing to answer is, why do we need a plan? Why do we need a district technology plan? The first reason is that the plan outlines the district's plan for using technology in the district, so that we actually have a direction for the instructional use of technology. A second reason is for future funding opportunities. RUSD has been the recipient of several grants over the years around technology, and almost all of those grants require that we have a technology plan in place. And we know that there are future opportunities coming down with pending reauthorization of the Elementary Secondary Education Act. There are some grants that may be coming available in the next several years that we want to ensure we have the proper documentation in place to compete for those grants. A third reason is it's just a good practice. Regardless of funding, regardless of requirements, having a technology plan in place is a best practice not only for our district but for districts across the state and across the country, so that we can explain what our role and why we want to use technology to enhance the learning in our classrooms. And then the fourth point is communication. So when we think to the LCAP stakeholder engagement that we had, the initial stakeholder engagement, and you look at the top 5 priorities or the top 5 themes that emerged from that, technology played a significant role in 2 of those top 5. One was that the community was asking that we provide opportunities for our students to engage with technology in the classroom, and the second was really focused around individualized learning. And so we obviously see technology as a way of, not the sole way, but one way of addressing that need to personalize learning and to attend to the individual needs of each student. And so the technology plan is a way for us to communicate back with our stakeholders on how we are addressing those needs that came up in that initial LCAP stakeholder engagement. We do have a current technology plan. It was board approved in 2012. It is a very innovative and forward-thinking document. There are many wonderful things in that document, and it focuses mainly in 3 areas: curriculum and instruction, professional development, and infrastructure. These 3 broad categories are categories you'd see in most technology plans across the state and across the country. And as we move forward with a new plan, you'll see these same 3 categories emerging. And while our current plan, I've stated, is innovative and forward-thinking, it was developed at a time and prior to many changes in education, major changes, not only at the state level but the federal level, as well as a number of changes at the local level. So with these different changes, it is prompting that need to change. Some of the needs that I address here, the need for change, is that we have several priorities or several new initiatives that have come to light in the last few years that our current technology plan does not address. So if we think about the Portrait of a Graduate, the educational services theory of action, as we talk about our students, we want to leave RUSD as college, career, and world ready, is not necessarily aligned to our current technology plan. We think about the board goals. While they were developed and introduced at the same time this technology, our current technology plan, was being approved, it makes no reference in our current technology plan to the goals that you've laid out as a board, and we want to make sure that there's alignment between those 2. LCAP and LCFF, as we've seen, one of the most, the largest change in the way in which our schools are funded in the last several decades. Again, their technology plan was approved and written before LCAP and LCFF. We want to make sure that there's alignment there. And then our new content standards. Over the last several years, we've seen new content standards come into the classroom. And again, our technology plan that we currently have does not address that alignment between the current content standards and our plan. And then finally, the rapid change in technology. As technology is changing on seems to be a minute-by-minute basis. There's a new product or a new software piece out there every single day. We want to ensure that we have the flexibility in our plan to adapt and adjust as that comes up. So in order to address this need, we recently, over the last several months, put together an RUSC Technology Advisory Group, and you can see the members on the board there who are kind of that overseeing advisory group. And we proposed to this group some options around our current technology plan. We knew that we needed to make some changes and we needed to have some alignment in place. And we kind of proposed two options. One, do we tweak the current plan that we have to address LCAP and LCFF board goals and those different items, or do we need to kind of start over with a new technology plan? And over several meetings and several times we met and discussed this, it was determined by this group that we do need to actually start from scratch and come up with a new RUSD technology plan. So we are currently in the midst of the work on this, and I'll share with you quickly the timeline that we're looking at. Currently we are in the stakeholder engagement phase of the technology plan, and I'll speak to that in more detail in just a moment. But as we move on into November and January, we'll actually be establishing the writing groups for the new technology plan and actually writing the first draft. We hope to come back to the board and several of the parent groups in January with a first draft to receive some input on our efforts, and then take January through March to revise based on that input, and then come back to you as a board in March of 2016 for final approval of our technology plan. Now, I mentioned that we're currently in the stakeholder engagement phase. What we decided as a group was that we wanted to kind of model our stakeholder engagement after the LCAP stakeholder engagement. We wanted to be able to engage all of our community, not just the folks in our schools, but also our parents and community members. And so we really looked at three broad questions to ask all different groups. So we didn't want to target individual groups with specific questions, but we asked questions around what kind of tools should be in our classroom, what kind of technology tools should our students have engage with on a day-to-day basis, how should those tools be used, how should our teachers be using those to enhance that instruction in the classroom. And then the third question we asked was around how do we support teachers and staff to ensure that they are receiving what they need to do those different things on a day-to-day basis. And then we also left an open question, open area for our community to add anything that they did not get in those first three questions. And we made these all open-ended. We didn't make them multiple choice. We really wanted to hear from our community about their priorities and the things that they see and they want to see in our technology plan. We opened the survey on October 1st, and it will close on November 15th. We have used the district website as a way to promote that, social media channels. We continue to engage various parent groups around the district. And we had the opportunity at the Riverside Long Night of Arts and Innovation to have a booth downtown. And it was a really good opportunity. We passed out over 1,000 flyers to our community and actually had a station for them to go ahead and actually fill out the survey at that time. It was a really great opportunity our community was walking right by us the whole evening. It was a really good opportunity to have them come over, sit down for a few minutes and take that survey. At this point, we have nearly 600 responses from our community. We're very encouraged to see the different input that's coming. Some of the themes that are starting to emerge, I'll provide four for you. That we continue to provide more and more devices for our students. We've heard a lot of feedback from the community and from our different stakeholders about moving closer and closer to a 1-to-1 ratio for our students, so having one device for every student in the district. One theme that has emerged time and time again is the issue around internet access for our students at home. So working with the city to find solutions around that has been a theme that has come up several times. Also increasing the professional learning opportunities for our staff and for our teachers has emerged quite frequently. And then lastly, support on campus. So having more technical support on campus and more instructional technology support on campus. Those are four themes that are starting to emerge. So as we as the advisory group begin to think about this new technology plan, I've talked to you about the alignment of goals. We obviously want to have our technology plan aligned to all of these different areas like the the LCAP, your board goals, the Portrait of a Graduate, and new content standards from the state. One of the big emerging themes out of the advisory group was that we wanted the technology plan to be focused on student learning first. We wanted that to be the primary driver and not technology as the primary driver, and technology taking that secondary seat, but really looking at the teaching and learning in the classroom and how technology can support that and not overwhelm that. And then finally, we were looking really to create a solid framework for this technology plan, but allow some flexibility. Our schools, our principals, our teachers, and our students are extremely innovative in the things that they come up with, and we don't want to put them in a box and not allowing them to try and be innovative, but we also want to provide them enough structure that they feel that they can move forward. So as we move to a time, I'm hoping to get some input from you as a board. The way we've been starting to think about technology, especially in the Instructional Support Division led by Renee Hill, is to really think about technology in RUSD in these 4 broad buckets. Thinking about infrastructure, so the cables and the wires, everything that's in the walls that's making all those connections. Thinking about hardware, so thinking about student devices and teacher devices, projectors, classroom displays, the servers that run all of our internet. Thinking about software like Haiku and Google Apps for Education. Thinking about Guru and Accelerated Reader. And then the last one, which is one that we often overlook, and we've tried to do something cute here and name it Peopleware. But really thinking about the different individuals who are involved in making sure all of this is pulled off. So thinking about our network analysts, our technology services individuals who are day-to-day ensuring that the Wi-Fi and the infrastructure is up to speed. Thinking about our M&O staff who is attending to our projectors and our classroom display. Thinking about the professional development that we put on our staff developers who help our teachers on a day-to-day basis to enhance their instruction with technology. So as we move into this next phase of hearing from you, we just wanted to provide you with some broad categories in which we've been thinking about technology that might help you as you provide some input. So that concludes my brief presentation, and I hope I'll turn it back over to Mrs. Alavi to hopefully get some input from you as a board, because this is obviously we're engaging our stakeholders, our teachers, administrators, our parents, our students, and our community members, but your voices is just as important in moving this plan forward and really hearing your priorities and your vision for the instructional use of technology in our USD.
Thank you very much. That was very comprehensive. Mr. Hunt, you have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. I can't ask how old you are, so how long have you been with us?
I've been with RUSD 10 years.
10 years, great.
Yes.
Well, I think you're very important, you and Ms. Hill and Ms. Clowder and others, very important to the future of where our district's going. In the olden days, which was about 16 years ago, you would have been the person if you're talking about brick and mortar. But as Dr. Miller taught us, it's going to be different, very different. So tell me, as you engage stakeholders, I had the opportunity, members of the board, to be at the Inland Empire Hispanic Leadership Conference, and where Jay Orr, our county executive, was recognized. And his, I believe, besides leaving the hospital in good stead, and he's done that, I think Jay's hallmark is he wants to, with the San Bernardino counterpart, develop a very much a wired 2 counties, that all homes will be that way, to have access, as you're talking about student learning, to break through the poverty hold, that the chains of poverty that we have in these 2 counties. So are you working, is he one of your stakeholders, I'm wondering? And is Charter one of your stakeholders?
They are a stakeholder. We actually work with the Smart Riverside Board. They're one of our avenues in which we go through and work with Charter and different organizations to look at the digital inclusion. So bringing, if not free internet access, bringing affordable internet access to our community.
And so I'll leave it, of course, to Dr. Hanson, but I would recommend that y'all reach out to Mr. Orr's office, and we're an important part of this city, and I think he would entertain that. And of course, they're right across the street. Their IT department is. Tell us about we're assuming you're talking about one-to-one and all this. Are our campuses Wi-Fi'd?
They are. We actually are undergoing currently several projects around the district to bring all of our schools up to speed. And I apologize, I don't know the number right off the top of my head. I know that's Chuck Szilagyi, it's Director of Techno Services, who could give you those numbers. But we have made strides and through LCAP funding and various funds to bring our schools up to that standard, yes.
If I can interject here, Mr. Hunt, all of our...
No, you can't, of course not.
Please. All of our schools have internet connection, and all of our schools have some level of wireless. Of course, the more devices we have, the more we need. So we undertook a project last summer to refurbish 14 schools, and we have them on a cycle that we're doing now. So all of them have some, not all have what we consider adequate at this point.
How, as we begin to look at a GEO bond and the work that Dr. Lewis is doing, I mean, what is the kind of investment? I mean, how strong are we, or how weak are we? How fragile are we? Is a question I have. I mean, if everything went down, I mean, I don't know if it happens that way.
We were able to get some funds allocated in LCAP this year to do some work for disaster recovery, just to look at our current status. We have a third party look at our status for disaster recovery. Without getting too technical, I would say we need to improve some of our hardware for filtering and user identification to increase security. And then just in practices, we talk about it all the time in Cabinet, just always protecting student data, and student data privacy is just an ongoing issue that you handle with practices, not with any particular object.
Okay. Well, and one thing, Mr. Dunlap was talking about professional development, and this is anecdotal, but I just sort of runs juxtapose or counterpose, is that I visited Highland because one of my family friends and all is the library assistant there. It was her birthday, and I wanted to see what she did and all this sort of thing. And that school had eliminated their IT person, and as a library assistant, she had all these carts with all these devices. I mean, it was very technical, and I think it just finally broke her. She asked to be transferred to a different school. So my question is you know, we can say professional development, but why would an elementary school, particularly on Highland side, eliminate their IT person? Don't need to answer that now, but I would like to know that, because it's one thing to say professional development, it's another thing in the field, and to put this on a very capable woman, a very fine citizen here in this town, and a dedicated employee, does all these reading clubs with these little people and everything. But I think it finally just broke her down, and it was disappointing to me that happened. And so it just didn't match up with what Mr. Dunlap is presenting to us in the finer details. But I'm not complaining. I'm very proud of what y'all are doing and all. But let's make sure we're walking the talk. All right.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Cloud.
I have excuse me, I have a cold. I have a couple of concerns, questions, etc. I think I have to congratulate our staff, because we didn't end up in some of the serious problems that some of the other districts did, like LA, when we've used our devices wisely. And I think one of the first things we did was make sure that students knew how to use them, and then parents knew how to use them. And I think that has been something that has saved us a great deal of grief. So with that, I would say we need to continue that kind of long-range thinking, because the goal is first and foremost student learning. So with that, I would say we need to look at the needs of the students versus the equipment that they need, because sometimes we have not bought the best or had access to the best kind of equipment that the students need. And we need to make sure that we do the research before we purchase the devices or get a grant for the devices or whatever. Another real concern I have has been touched on is the connectivity. It's not fair to give assignments to kids in areas where they don't have Wi-Fi, because there's a lot of folks that can't afford Wi-Fi, and that would have been us a few years back. We need to make sure that that is fair, and that is not always fair. So we need to make sure it is. We need to make sure that we equip our employees, which was touched on too, because sometimes there are problems. We have not used systems always that were the best. We need to be proactive about that and make sure that not all of the teachers and staff time is taken up with learning a new program for a program they just learned last year. I'm concerned too about I use a computer a lot now, believe it or not. The mayor asked me one time if I texted. I was really insulted because, of course, I text. So, you know, we need to make sure that we're not only teaching computer fluency, but that we're teaching writing and all those skills as well, because the problem, as probably you know, and studies have been done on this, you tend to process information quickly on the computer. That's not the same as holding a book or using a pen. And we need to make sure that our kids are getting that as well, because sometimes the computer doesn't work, and we don't need to leave our kids bereft. Besides that, writing reinforces the knowledge that they need. And also, the whole issue of privacy. I read an article the other day that was really concerning to me. If I had students in school, I would be concerned about the sharing of data with business and with the government. And because, you know, that's what we're doing now with it seems so reasonable to share our students' information state to state or district to district. But there's a downside to that, and I don't think we've paid enough attention to it. And I don't think parents really are aware of the extent that that data can be shared. I think we need to make sure that we're using technology properly. I've heard from teachers that students being 16, 15, 12, don't always use technology properly. And that's a problem. We need to make sure that it's used properly and that something happens when it isn't. And I think my final point is we need to make sure that teachers are the focus, not technology. And it's real easy with all the programs and things that are out there to think those are going to solve some problems, but the engagement of a teacher with a student, and I know we know this, but we don't always, we need to do this in practice regularly. Make sure the teacher is the driver. And sometimes teachers are excellent teachers and not real good with technology. So how are we going to measure that, and what are we going to do? Are we going to punish them because they don't use certain things? You know, teacher can be, a student can learn with an excellent teacher without any technology. So those are the concerns. I mean, technology is such a blessing in so many ways. And I was sitting there with my grandkids the other day on our smartphones. And I thought, this is the new century. You know, the grandparents are sitting there on the couch and the kids are using, and I thought it was actually kind of a horrifying thought as well, because we were using the devices instead of the communication. So it's a typical situation today, and we need to do the best we can to remedy that. And with that, I've said enough.
Thank you. Mr. Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Appreciate the sharing of that information, that presentation. I agree with a lot of what has been said about what things we need to be considering as we build out this technology plan. From a 30,000-foot level, I urge you and your staff to continue to reach out to a diverse group of stakeholders, make sure we're getting into the communities that don't have access to technology and that don't have access to internet, so that we hear from them as well. I'm sure we're going to do that, but just to reinforce that point. And I think you all have a very difficult task. Anytime you're building a technology plan in the field of education, two things that are moving faster than anyone can catch. So I commend you for that, and I think we're doing the right things by asking these different stakeholders what needs to be done. I think from a more practical point, asking for particular input, I would say pay particular attention to the peopleware. When I hear from teachers and users of technology, it's the frustration on actually using the technology. I know for my business, we have access to a hotline where if something breaks down, I can pick up the phone and say, hey, my Chromebook doesn't work, or this site's not working, or I can't get this to load, and someone can walk me through the steps. And if we could somehow replicate that for a teacher and their mid-lesson plan, and they're reliant on that technology, to help that lesson plan, and they've spent the time to create it, and yet the internet goes down or server goes down or something, that there's somebody that they can call if they're not at the site that can walk them through that process in real time. Another nice thing that we have that I use for my company, I think would be great if we can use in RUSD, is there's an email called Just Ask at mycompaniesname.com. And so if you had a Just Ask at rusd.com, where if teachers are putting together a lesson plan at night and they're going to utilize our technology systems to do so, and they get stuck, they can send an email and someone can respond to them within a certain period of time so that they're not waiting on our IT staff, which I know is overburdened with requests. So if we can create some of those systems and processes and make that very easy for teachers to use, I think teachers would be more willing to utilize the technology that your staff is working so hard to help make teachers' job easier. And I think that is how we can really leverage technology. I think to Mr. Martin's point earlier in his presentation, it's all about letting teachers do their job and not letting them get distracted by these outside forces. I mean, we all want meetings and technology because we think it's going to make someone's job easier, and we all know that's the point. But in reality, we've got to make sure that actually happens. So the things we can do to create systems and processes that everybody's on the same page, I think it will make the adoption rate and the retention rate much greater. So while I know we're all on tight budgets and it's hard for certain sites to have everything at their disposal, especially with technology being so expensive, if we could somehow pass that cost on to maybe cohorts of schools and hire somebody for a cohort that can be reached via phone or email or text, I think that would be really beneficial. And then just having ongoing trainings for teachers to be able to use technology. And rather than make a scheduled meeting, which forces the teacher to give up some part of their day or something else that they would want to do, maybe make it online webinar or something where it's still live training, because I think getting people to download and watch a video is very, very difficult. But if it could just be, hey, on every Tuesday at such and such a time, we're going to be going over some asset of Guru or Haiku or something, and teachers, if they wish, can log on from home or download it later or something. So those are my few pieces of information. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Lockdasson.
Thanks, Mrs. Elvey. Thank you, Mr. Dunlap. Just a couple quick things. I hope that one of the priorities of the plan is to help our employees with reporting requirements, any kind of coding that we do. I know, like early childhood, they ridiculous amount of reporting to the feds on one end and the state on the other. And so I know, I think somebody was working on some proprietary program that we had developed to be able to help with both of those. But they physically go in and record the same information twice for two different recording purposes. Anyway, so I just think that should be a priority. I want to reiterate Mr. Hunt's comment about if as much as we can have staff on site at some of these places. You know, a lot of it is just people filling in places to help, and so the technology becomes burdensome more than helpful. The question I had for you was, a couple of years back, I think it was on our finance committee, we were given some budget estimates from, I think it was Mr. Fine, I don't remember what it was about, but yeah, because he was the CBO at the time, for servers to house our data, and it was just a ridiculous amount of money. It was crazy, crazy, crazy in the millions, and how we couldn't afford to do it. And I think it was Mr. Lee brought up the question of why we weren't using the cloud for storage. Is that something we're looking at? Because, I mean, a lot of people are moving, a lot of businesses are moving.
Defer to. Particular item is more in Mr. Zalaji's wheelhouse.
Okay.
So,
He's
technology
standing up.
services rather than instructional technology.
Okay.
So we've been migrating some of our servers from physical to virtual servers, and I know Chuck and his team has considered some cloud storage, but then you have bandwidth considerations, you have data
I know there's
security
issues associated
situations.
with that too. That's why I was asking.
And that's correct. And we're trying to stay on top of that. We've got all of our servers are virtualized right now.
Oh, they are.
We do have a network storage device. We just upgraded, so we do have a lot of storage, but we are looking at, of course, we use Google to store things. We use Haiku. So in a sense, we're using that cloud-based storage.
Okay. Thank you. That was a question I had. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm looking over the advisory group, and I know most people on this list, a couple I do not. Do we have any working teachers who are actually in the classroom on this committee?
Not on the advisory group. As we do put together the writing groups, though, we will be, and I actually had a conversation with Mr. Martin earlier today about tapping into some of the different teachers in the district to help us on the writing process.
Okay, I'm really concerned that we don't have good teacher input into some plan. We need to make sure that the people that are using it are really involved in the planning of it. So I would really like to see that.
Okay.
There was something else. I love Mr. Lee's idea of that just ask idea. That was really great because so often I'm not very techie. I have one question and I have to schedule tech guys to come out and I have to schedule a morning to be there for them to come in and answer a 10-minute question. I find the whole system cumbersome. When the program goes down, they need to be there and they need to give that kind of time. Otherwise, I feel like our system is so clumsy. And I wish there were ways we could get quick answers to things without having to send 2 IT guys out to my house. Yeah, I know sometimes. The other thing I would really like to get, Dr. Hansen and I have visited a group, and you can help me with the name of it, but it's the CEOs of the tech companies. That's what the name of it is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well,
Wow, that's a very
that's
clever name.
That's a clever name, is right.
Yes.
I would love to access this group and talk to them about what they could see for the future, because they're in tech now trying to get these companies off, and I think they might have some really good ideas about how to proceed. But other than that, I'm not a tech person, so you've got to rely on experts. So,
Absolutely.
Mrs. Lock-Dawson.
Yeah, I just really quickly following up on that stakeholder. Are you having students involved in that too?
We did engage teachers to then engage their students. So that's been the mechanism which we've gone actually through the teachers to get to the students.
Because, I mean, they really know
Absolutely.
what they need and how to use it in many ways more than we do. Because I would say myjustask.com is Olivia, my 16-year-old, and she does. She knows what to do and what's best. So I did want to follow up on that. So
great.
Thank you.
Excellent. Mr. Hunt.
Well, Henry Lee showed me how to Skype on my phone, so yes, do get students involved. And I would also ask that you, thank you, Mrs. Albee, those are really good insights. I hope that you're also including CBU and RCC. CBU's got an excellent, they have upgraded their IT program under Mark Howe amazingly, and that's who you should call, Mark, and UCR and RCC, and also our chamber. I mean, we really have, we're moving towards that. We've got a techie group. I mean, Brian Hawley of Luminex and George Hansel are people that we should call upon, and they're the kind of folks that would give their time to work with you, Steve. I know they'd be proud to do that. Wonderful. Thank you for your work.
I agree. They would be very happy to do that. I think that's it.
Okay.
I hope that's enough input for you for now.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to authorize a little 10-minute break here, so if we could come back at about 8:10, that would be great. Board members? Thank you. I'm going to be opening the meeting, bringing the meeting back to order. Making Mr. Hunt run. That's good. Okay, we are now to the action portion of our calendar, and we are now at H1. And we now have Mrs. Kakish who's going to be presenting.
Technical questions.
Yes.
So before you are the approval of the tentative agreements that we reached with both of our bargaining units. The first one is for our CTA, and it's with regards to our agreement for the health benefits. This particular package actually creates an EPO plan that is no out-of-pocket for individuals that choose that plan or employees that choose that plan. The agreement for our CTA is over 2 years, and similar agreement for the same general cost with CSCA was also reached, which is the second item on the agenda. And that one is for 1 year, and we open the discussion for the second year. So half of the dollar amount is ongoing and half of the dollar amount is one time. Both agreements were checked by the County Office of Education as far as the affordability, and they send us a letter confirming with our findings as far as affordability. So I'd like to open it up for any questions with regards to those.
Does the board have any questions? I'll entertain a motion. Mrs.
I second.
Larkhausen, Mr. Hunt. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a comment?
No, that was
Okay.
going to be my comment.
Okay. Okay, we're now voting on number H1, which is the tentative agreement between RCTA and RUSD. Please vote. And that does pass. I will entertain a motion for the second item.
So moved.
Mrs. Cloud moves and Mr. Hunt seconds. Now please vote. Okay, those two tentative agreements do pass, and thank you for your hard work. I think it's really very special that we can offer our employees that kind of program, so it's very good. All right, now we are at H3, single plans for student achievement update.
Yes, good evening, Mrs. Alavi, Dr. Hanson, members of the board. The English Learner Master Plan is a document that describes how the district and school sites will meet federal and state legal requirements for English learners. The last time that this plan was approved was in 2011. Usually it's a consent item. However, due to some changes, recent changes in standards, assessments, and funding model, we are bringing this item to you in the form of an action item. And I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Anu Menon, who's our Director for Academic English Learners, who will review some of the highlights of the plan.
Great, thank you. Hi. Good evening, President Alavi, Dr. Hanson, and board members. This evening, we are bringing the English Learner Master Plan for your approval. The purpose of the plan is threefold. One, it allows sites and district to meet the federal and state compliance requirements. Second, it allows for sites to be guided in the practice and services that they have for English learners. Sorry. And third, it allows for some consistency in terms of what is being done for English learners across the sites. Some of the major changes that have happened in the last few years have resulted in this EL Master Plan being brought to you this evening. One, the district no longer receives economic impact aid. As a result, the language resulting in compliance requirements no longer exist in the plan, and we had to remove that. Additionally, we have the ELA, ELD standards, the framework and the assessment that were adopted in California. That has resulted in some new terminology. You have issues like integrated and designated ELD that's been brought to the forefront, and that's now part of the plan. We also have the issue of CSTs no longer being the assessment, state assessment. And although we don't have SBAC cut points set, we had to have something in place as an interim measure for reclassification purposes. So that's part of our plan too. The components of the EL Master Plan are divided into 7 chapters. The first chapter, parent involvement, talks about translation of notices and how we get parents involved in the process. The second chapter is on governance and administration. It talks again about the home language survey, how we place our students in the English Learner Program, and how we notify parents when they are placed into the program. The third chapter revolves around funding, briefly mentions Title I, Title III, and our general funds. Also goes into time accounting and how these personnel are paid. Chapter 4 talks about standards, assessment, and accountability. And in this chapter, we talk about the reclassification process. We talk about monitoring students that have been reclassified, the 2-year process for that. We also talk about long-term English learners. And we also have a process in place for evaluating the English Learner Program. Chapter 5 discusses staffing and professional development. It talks about the teacher quality, the credentials that teachers have to have in order to teach English learners. We also talk about the professional development that's in place for English learners within our district, tied to integrated and designated ELD. Chapter 6 is about opportunity and equal education access, and in this chapter, we talk about specifically in detail placement for ELs, what an SEI classroom should look like, what an ELM classroom looks like, and the waivers in place for the alternative programs that we have in our district. And the last chapter is about teaching and learning, and this gives an overview in the last couple of pages on the ELD curriculum that we have in place. It also talks about the supplemental curriculum pages that we have, materials that we have, and those are the chapters within this English Learner Master Plan, and it's just a brief overview. Any questions?
Yes, Mrs. Lakdasan.
Thank you. This is not necessarily about the report, but it's related to English language, and it's a question I've had burning since last year, actually. And I discussed it, I think, with Mrs. Alvey or Mrs. Cloud before, but help me. So somebody who works in this area can help me. So in dual language immersion, right, we immerse our native English speakers in a language in kindergarten because, in a different language in kindergarten because the research shows and our own results bear out that these kids actually excel and do much better in every other subject, right? And then I hear consistently in the English language learners that they need to learn their own skills in their own language first to become proficient in those. And that seems like a double standard to me. And I'm wondering if that's, actually holding our English language learners back by not immersing them. Can somebody address that?
I can try. As far as English learners are concerned, the idea is to see what they bring to the table as an asset and not a deficit. And so they come with core proficiency. They come with basic proficiencies, just like you or I. I have a different language. I come with a certain skill sets. Sometimes what happens is we don't understand those skill sets, and therefore we try to immerse them into the new language without taking into account what they already bring into the table. So kids that are in the DLI program have an opportunity to have that seen as an asset. So their core proficiencies, those basic skills that they have that are transferable to any language or any content area instruction, is seen as such an asset that they are absolutely able to immerse themselves in their own native language first, and then transfer that experience into understanding what needs to be done in learning a new language. So I think that's where you see that happening.
Okay, so that's still a little confusing to me, because is that kind of a lower expectation for our kids who come in that are English language learners, because we assume that we don't know what their proficiencies are or what their basic skill set are, but we assume that the English language learners have this really great set of skills? And
No, I don't think there's any low expectation for English language learners. I think there's absolutely high expectations, and everything we do in this district, or in any district for that matter, I guess, is about making sure kids learn well. But there is enough research to say that kids coming in with different language skills also have, if they're doing well in DLI program, which is what I think you're asking me, if they're doing well in a DLI program, there is enough research to say that it could be a result of their own basic skills and their knowledge and skill sets being seen as an asset, or working as an asset for them, not being seen so much as working as an asset for them.
So it's a cultural thing in the school, in the sense that teachers are seeing, or that they're being rewarded from their native English skills in other areas because they've learned something? Is that what you're saying? Because the research is, it's counter. I mean, it is really absolutely contradictory.
Right.
You see that, right?
Yeah, and I'm trying to go back to my own experiences as a child, because I had the English learner experience growing up, and I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, but I remember my dad worked for the steel industry, and as a result, we traveled all over the country. And if you know anything about India, you probably know that every state has a different language, and the medium of instruction is that language. And so sometimes as a kid going from state to state, it was hard for me to be successful as as a language learner for that state, and to be able to pass. And I think part of that struggle that I had was that I did not have a way to connect to what I knew I was bringing in, even though I was going somewhere else. So for a long time, I did feel very much like a poor student. And I think my saving grace was that at some point my dad actually was able to help me get into an English medium school, which was across the country. And I don't know if I've answered the question, but I'm saying that as a language learner, sometimes fitting in is partly cultural, partly language, partly recognition. It's just such a complex issue, and I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer, or anyone is doing a right or a wrong thing. But I think just having some ideas about that does benefit the process. And it's probably not what you're expecting, but
I just think I just think honestly it really looks like a double standard to me. It looks like we have two different standards for those who are speaking English native and those who are not. So that's all. And I understand there's more complex research behind it, but that's what it appears on the surface. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Hunt.
Ms. Menon, I did read your report, and I'm very much in favor of it. I just want to ask you on the dual immersion, just to follow up on Mrs. Lock-Dawson's comments. How do we vet the young person that wants to be in, they're kindergartners, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we vet that they're prepared for this?
For the DLI program?
Yes, ma'am.
I think
because isn't it 95% Spanish when their first year, something like that?
Yes.
Okay.
It's 90-10, so 90% in Spanish and 10% in English. But did you want to come up, Michelle?
While Michelle comes up, the students that are selected for the DLI program, There is no vetting in terms of which students are selected or weeded out or anything like that. It is by application, and then we do have a waiting list whenever we hit the maximum number of students that we can accommodate. But there is a ratio in terms of the ideal number of students that are English only and the number of students that are English learners.
Do you have a balance then? Or?
I'll ask Michelle to speak to that balance.
Mr. Garcia really explained it quite well. Really the only criteria that we have when students are applying to the program in kindergarten is we look at their dominant languages. So language or languages.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to have that balance in the classroom of English dominant students, Spanish dominant students, and of course bilingual students. So we don't pre-assess, we don't screen. The program is open to anyone who applies and of course gets a spot if we happen to go to a lottery. So we have students in our program who are special education students. We have speech students. We have autistic children. We have Spanish speakers who come in with a varying degree of Spanish proficiency, and the same with our English speakers.
And how is the ELAC involved, if they are at all?
In the dual language immersion program?
No, I'm not.
Oh.
What's the group called that we have? The
English
DLAC.
learner.
Thank you. Thank you. How are they involved in that? I mean, 'cause so much. I mean, that was a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing it. But one thing I want to point out is that I'm assuming your dad wasn't a steel worker; he was an executive. And so a lot of these kids don't have, and I'm sure he had a degree. A lot of these little people don't have parents that have had that opportunity, and so they can't. Maybe they don't have the facility to, like your father did, to help them. So I want to know what we're doing to support that family and that child in that way. And does DLAC, is it DLAC?
We have ELAC at the school sites and we have DLAC at the district level. And the purpose of those committees is to help parents become more involved in their children's education, to help educate our parents regarding how language acquisition occurs and what's happening in our school sites in terms of building their content knowledge as well.
Thank you.
So the agendas are built around making sure that parents have access to what's going on in RUSD. So when when sites put out their ELAC and DLAC agendas, a part of that is towards making sure that they know how to get into
Good.
the school systems.
Which is more than we do for the average, everyday little Joe, right? Right. I mean, really, it's good. I mean, I appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you very much. I do like your report, and I'm ready to vote on it when you are.
Thank you. Mrs. Cloud.
I would just say, I don't know, I didn't hear, did you, no. This did come before the instruction subcommittee, and I knew it was coming before the full board, so I would move approval.
It's been moved. Do I hear a second? Mr. Hunt seconds. I have one question before we vote. This master plan is an internal document? Is it ever used outside the district?
This is an internal document primarily, but it is on our website. It will get, once it's approved, it does go up on our website, and so people have access to the document, but it serves as a guide for sites and districts in terms of...
It's mainly used in-house, though. Mm-hmm. Okay, because I was going to say it's pretty technical and uses a lot of acronyms.
Right.
I assume that everyone who reads it then knows all those acronyms?
Right,
Okay,
right.
we'll just go from there. Mm-hmm. It has been moved and seconded. Would you please vote? And that does pass. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to board policies. We have several here. Mr. Walker. Or no, we have somebody else. Sorry. I thought Mr. Walker was going to... Oh, okay. Sorry.
The board policies are coming back for you for a second read tonight. The board regulations have been put up there for you. They have going to have the same numbers going into the future as the board policy for convenience of the public. At the same time, the adjustments for easy access to connected board policies has been added Dr. McGuire is going to walk you through these 3 board policies. They are available for action if it is your desire.
Thank you.
And I'm also going to give you copies without the lines through it so you can see it a little better.
Oh, that would be handy. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So before you first is the board policy. It's not in the order that I handed it to you, but for conduct. As you can see, we observed at your recommendation the use of the CSBA policy in there. And after certain sections, like number 1 on the conduct, it references other board policies that have similar or supporting types of information. And that is standard throughout each of the policies. And at the very end, we have legal references to Ed Code, legal findings, even vehicle code, United States Code, and different publications. So the content has not changed from your first reading, so if you have any questions, please let me know.
Thank you for taking the time to do that. Mr. Hunt.
I second Mrs. Alavi's compliment. Just because Dr. McGuire was in the news, you know, that unfortunate incident back east, I think it was Kentucky, where the young African-American girl wouldn't turn off her phone.
South Carolina.
You know, where was it?
Yeah, South Carolina.
Some belligerent state. But so under our policy, I can't have my phone on during class unless I'm using it in my instructional time, unless I'm allowed to use it instructional.
Correct. That's in the conduct.
All right.
Yeah.
So, and how does the teacher know that I'm doing that and not texting my girlfriend?
Well, I would assume if they're wandering the class and watching the engagement of the students, they would know whether they're appropriately engaged or not. So it's similar to when we would pass notes and things when we were younger.
And if I use against our rules, our policy, if I use that device to film another student, which could be inappropriate and hurtful to their demeanor, you can take that device from me.
Correct.
You can confiscate it.
Correct.
Can you go in? Do you have the ability to go in and erase what I did and review what I did? I mean, you're looking at my private stuff.
If there's reasonable suspicion that Ed Code has been violated, like it was pornographic or anything like that, we have a right to conduct a reasonable search, and it could do that. Typically, we'll ask the student first for permission to do that. The SRO can also be brought in and look at that too.
Let me just clarify, if it has to do with any concern related to pornography, especially child pornography, which is what we would be talking about with a student and student situation, the phone would be confiscated, put in a sealed envelope, and presented to the police. The administrator or my office would not search the phone for any potential pictures that may be inappropriate. In regard to text messaging that could demonstrate, as part of an investigation, a violation of education code related to theft or some other particular area, admitting that they were in a fight at school, yes, we can go in and we can, through reasonable suspicion, look at that information. Often we will involve the SRO in that investigation and have them look through the phone.
And thank you for that explanation. I wasn't quite going as far as that, but I'm glad we know we have those in there. But what if a student's trying to use it, that he or she's trying to, I don't know, catching a kid picking his nose or something, he's going to use it to bully him, and the teacher realizes that. Do you have the right to go in and ask the kid to erase it?
You can confiscate the phone and you can bring it to the attention of the parent. Normally something like that is a might or could, is not enough information to have something erased from a child's phone, but certainly conversations with parents will usually result in consequences both at school and at home.
All right, thank you. And then, where do inappropriate attire, is that just going with the state's definition? I didn't see, I know we referenced it, but I don't understand where the dress and grooming.
Say that again, Ms. Hunt.
Inappropriate attire?
Yes, number K, I didn't see any backup on that.
That would be followed up later. There's a dress and grooming board policy. This is the foundational conduct that goes. So as we move forward, we'll be bringing
So
more
we're
of
we're
those
approving
things.
the index right now?
Right.
Okay, of the gloss. Okay. Thank you very much. I would move for approval.
Can you hold off on that for just a minute? Mrs. Cloud?
I have a question. It's something, and I do thank you for kind of connecting the rules and regs and the policies. That's much more helpful. Excuse me. But in item number 17 under district responsibilities, I see that you deleted the school principal shall establish and put in teachers shall establish. And I'm looking at that and I'm not sure if it's helpful for teachers or not helpful. So why was the reason we went from principals to teachers? I think teachers probably need backup sometimes. And
That's particularly talking 17 around classroom rules. So it's giving the teachers the responsibility and the authority to establish the classroom rules. The assumption within it is the school is going to have rules as well.
well, I see that, but I just, yeah, I get that, but I'm not sure it has the same punch that principals do. But, I'm not going to, I guess I am quibbling a little bit, but I just think that, principals should be more specific than just other certificated staff. So, I don't know, how does Ed Code treat it like this?
The Ed Code specifically talks about establishing school rules and classroom rules. So this is just interpreting it in a more specific way.
Okay. Well, I won't quibble over that. I'm okay.
I think your concern is that the teacher isn't given support
Right.
in,
That's my concern. Is that
in the classroom situation. I think she's suggesting that, does this give the teacher that secondary level of support? Do you feel?
If I may,
Yeah.
the teacher establishing classroom rules is something that has always occurred. There are school rules that are going to be universally applied across all classrooms, and then a teacher, this specifically allows for a teacher to create classroom rules and hold children accountable to those classroom rules. They're going to be approved by the principal. They're going to be in collaboration with the principal. Principal is going to hold a student accountable to not only the school rules and the classroom rules, but the education requirements under 48-900, which would be potential areas for suspension or consideration for suspension or alternative means of correction. Those aren't always identified in here, that going into the specificity. So these are generic, larger picture umbrella issues. This particular one that's being talked about now is for the ability of a teacher to establish rules within their classroom. And if you notice, the change was principal with school to teacher with classroom.
Right. Okay.
So it corresponds and correlates.
Okay. Mr. Hunt?
I think Ms. Cloud has a good point, though, and it is equivalent, but I do, every classroom, I mean, I know I helped in the days when you got punished, you had to go out and clap racers together, but every classroom I can recall, there was, because of the type of course being taught, sometimes it was free-flowing, and other times we were to be very quiet and studious and that sort of thing. So I'm glad that we're giving teachers control that they can set the environment and the culture for their classroom within the guidelines, which I assume you're doing, the guidelines that the principal and the school have set to Dr. Hansen's guidelines as well.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, now unless there's further discussion, I'll entertain that motion. Mr. Hunt moves. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Mrs. Cloud seconds. Any further discussion? We are voting on the conduct policy, Board Policy 5131. Okay, that does pass. Now we'll talk about our bullying policy.
Same basic overall comments. We adhere to the CSBA format.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Hunt moves for approval. Do I have a second? Mr. Lee seconds. Any further discussion? Please vote. Okay, that does pass. Our third policy, non-discrimination in district programs and activities. Is there discussion? Mrs. Lock-Dawson moves. Do I hear a second? Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your name.
It's not
working. I am very sorry about that. Mrs. Cloud, please.
Well, this is the one that I have concerns about. I can't vote positively on this one. I think the perception of one or more such characteristics, perception is a word that troubles me. I know that we're following the state guidelines on this one, but I think the state's perception of some of this information, because they're not really dealing with things day in and day out like school districts are, is a little broad. So I just wanted to make that clear why I wouldn't be voting. It's the terminology of that edition, which I think that's the new edition that we haven't had before. The perception of one or more such characteristics. I think that opens the door for some very confusing interactions. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Hunt? Mr. Hunt moves for approval. Do I hear a second? Second. Any further discussion? Okay, then please vote. That is 4 yes, 1 no. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That does pass. Okay, now to the board policy on selection, adoption, and reconsideration of high school graduation requirements. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, hello again. This item before you is the first read of board policy number 6146 on the selection, adoption, and reconsideration of high school graduation requirements. And there are two purposes why this policy is coming forward for your approval. One is to remove language that is no longer relevant, and that you can see on pages 247 and 248, referencing graduation requirements for class of 2014 and the class of 2015. And so it just leaves the graduation requirements beginning with the class of 2016. The other purpose, and more importantly, has to do with language on concurrent enrollment, which is on page 251. One of the things that we found with the MOUs that were signed with our local college and university, RCC and UCR, was that we had some limiting language that prevented students from easily receiving credit for courses that they would take at the university level. And so we wanted to ensure that our policy was in line with the spirit of the MOUs and the opportunities that we want to afford students moving forward in light of those understandings that we have with those universities. So you can see there the change in the language on what was item 14 and now item 12 on page 251, opening up that opportunity for students.
Very good. Mr. Lee. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Mrs. Cloud.
I have some questions. On page 251, just a grammatical note, it should be superintendents with a comma, I do believe, designee for unique circumstances under concurrent enrollment, which is not really...
line.
Yeah, did you find it? Which is really not very important. But my understanding of item number 14, and then again in item number 15, it talks about the Casey, and it's my understanding is there is no Casey anymore. So shouldn't that be
That's a great
just deleted?
question. So, very good question. We actually took a look at that and considered that, but the reason why it's still there and it has not yet been brought forward for any change in language is because the KC has been actually suspended.
Okay.
And so, and in addition to that, there were two different legislations on that, and one of them is effective January 1st. And so we're going to be waiting to make any proposed changes to this particular item.
I
in this
would say
policy.
we're probably going to have to look at this again next year because I'm sure that's going to be suspended.
no, that's a good question.
And I would just note, too, I was looking, when this policy was adopted in 1979, we've reviewed it this is the 11th time we've reviewed our graduation requirements. And I know some of those times we've changed it. So this is something we look at fairly regularly. It looks like every year or two there's changes with Ed Code and things that we do internally as well. So
Yes,
I'm
correct.
glad we review that regularly.
Thank you.
And with that, I would move approval.
Okay, do I
If
hear a
it-
second?
No, because I have something to say first.
We can discuss it.
Look, I'll second it, it's fine. And, no, I don't. I have a conclusion I want to include.
Mr. Hunt.
All right.
We'll wait on.
Mrs.
wait
Cloud
on-
and I
wait
will
on
differ,
you.
but I'm not going to go into it. We will differ because the last time this came to us, and I commend you for bringing this to us, last time it had been 12 years since we looked at the requirements, and our number of credits were the lowest in the county. Under foreign language, California universities accept American Sign Language. Why do we not include it as an acceptable foreign language?
This actually is...
And let me just finish. In a city that houses one of the two, or is home to one of the two deaf schools in California. So
That's a really good question, Mr. Hunt, and
Thank
it's
you.
something that we're actually currently having conversations about. We're exploring the options and possibilities of doing that. We're having some conversations with the California School for the Deaf here in Riverside, and Lisa Kels, who oversees English Language Arts and Foreign Languages, working with Mr. Daryl Hansen, and looking at what options we'll have and the possibilities for offering that in the future, hopefully as early as next year. So that's something that we actively are pursuing in terms of the viability of that.
since there wasn't a second to the motion, can't we add that now? Why can't we add that now and you're working on it? Why can't we add American Sign Language?
Well, American Sign Language...
I don't wait another 5 years.
I don't think this policy would prevent us from including American Sign Language.
So can we list it? Because it says the University of California's A to G courses, and my understanding, it includes American Sign Language. Is that incorrect?
If I might, it's specifically talking about the SAT2 subject exam.
Oh. Well, then I've been corrected, but...
But the California regions, they do see American Sign Language as a foreign language. So that would be where it would fit in.
But the SA2 exam does not include it then?
No, not right now.
It
It's
could
not
be
a
one of the
subject
subject matter tests under
Okay.
languages on the SAT too, but I
Very
don't
good.
know that.
And obviously, as we bring that language, American Sign Language, we would, of course, submit it immediately for approval for the UC eligibility.
Do you think you'd be able to offer it at all of our campuses, or is that...
One of the
I think
things-
we only offer French at Poly, is that right? Is that still used to be a legend? Urban?
Well, I
We
think...
have French at STEM.
Well, STEM, I should say, but I mean, in our high school.
There's French is offered at at least a couple. I know Arlington offers French as well. Some of the languages that are offered depend on the teacher, sometimes the history, the culture of that school, and that context has determined what languages have been offered. And so to answer your question about would we offer American Sign Language at all schools, I think it has a potential for that. It would depend on the interest of students, where we would have the interest, and then, of course, to be able to get the staffing for that and seeing if we have, sometimes we have a full teacher that we can staff at a school. Sometimes we can only offer one section or two at a particular school. And so we'd have to take a look at all of those, those possibilities.
Thank you, Ms. Allaby. I'll move for
Sure.
approval.
It's been moved. I will take your motion as a second. Mrs. Lockdawson, did you have further questions? You're okay. All right, we will now vote on that. Policy 6146. That does pass. Thank you very much. Yes.
Mr. Garcia, one other question. We're now at 220 credits to graduate. How do we compare with some of our peer districts? We went from 215 to 220.
We went from 215 to 220. We increased the number of math credits,
Right.
which not all districts have. There's still a lot of districts that have a 2-year math requirement. So by increasing our math requirement to 3 years, we aligned ourselves closer to the A through G requirements. And then, of course, we changed our elective requirements to reflect the need for foreign language, CTE, or VAPA combination, making sure that students take at least 2 years of one of those areas. And so by doing so, by making those two changes, increased our requirements by 5 credits. And I'd have to do some research into seeing how closely aligned we are with other schools. If we're off by maybe 5 credits.
It isn't just the number. I like what you said about the math. You're absolutely right. Makes our graduate more competitive when he or she is applying to the colleges and all. And that's why I want Mr. Walker to pay attention to this, because because we're an open district and because we have declining enrollment because of birth rates in Riverside, we're offsetting that with young people that are coming into our district, transfers in. So I want us to advertise that come to Riverside because your child will be more competitively prepared. So I'm just trying to connect those two things together. Congratulations, good job.
Okay, thank you. Item H8, Board Policy 3511, Utilization of Energy Rebates, first reading.
Mrs. Alavi, Dr. Hanson, members of the board, this is a new policy that's being presented to you tonight. The Operations Board Subcommittee in August asked this item to be placed on the agenda to look at dedicating the uses of future energy rebates. We brought back a draft policy in October and made a few adjustments based on their input, and they asked to move this to the full board. So if we look on page 255, you'll see the actual policy. To give you a sense of past practice, we typically have, we generate rebates from utility companies based on the installation of energy savings equipment or energy systems, and usually parlay those rebate dollars back into additional energy savings type projects. So basically, and both board members can chime in, the interest was to dedicate future rebate dollars for those specific purposes. And also with the a point on number 4, that if the superintendent or his designee at their discretion, they can assign rebate funds towards staff uniforms. So that was just an option they wanted to include. Just one last comment. You'll notice that there's not a reference to education code. In fact, there was not a CSBA model policy that we could draft from, so we kind of just drew this on the fly, and it's before you for your consideration.
Dr. Lewis, what kind of money are we talking about when we talk about our energy rebates? Can you give me a wide number?
Yeah, it can vary depending on how many projects are going on at any one time. This past year it was about $75,000, but when we have large-scale, like Measure B work going on, where we're modernizing a number of schools, we're replacing a lot of large systems, you could get up to the hundreds of thousands.
Well, I will tell you what I have a problem with this, and I have a suggestion of how we might easily redirect it. I understand the goals from the committee. Energy rebates going into other energy projects kind of makes sense, but I think it's too narrow, because I think in certain years you might have a lot of money sitting around waiting for projects that may or may not be available, or you may want to save money for something else. My suggestion is that we say to consider energy projects maybe as a priority, but also open it up to other uses, because You've already opened it up for staff uniforms, which doesn't have anything to do with energy that I can see. And I would rather not have it be so narrowly focused. I would like to use this. I don't mind considering it as priority, but I don't know that I want to consider it exclusively, I should say. Mr. Hunt.
Well, the committee felt that it is disingenuous to get energy rebates and use them, and I'll get to the uniforms in a minute, for anything other than reinvesting in energy efficiency. Now, that can be as simple as the things that don't require DLR, Department of Architect. Is that right?
DSA.
DSA, thank you. Got my answer. And like changing over to LED lighting and things like that. So we would hope it would stay focused on the energy. And think about the culture of the Maintenance and Operations Committee. We deal with maintenance as well, and we've been very happy with the fact that our CSEA staff has embraced having a more professional image on campus. Instead of wearing the Harley-Davidson T-shirt, they're wearing our shirts and our jackets. But we need funds to be. There's no other earmarks to help these people buy these uniforms, or for us to buy them for them. So we think it adds to, and plus these are the people that are installing all these different things, and they need, rough weather wear and things like that. So we would hope it would stay towards simply energy, but I'm not. We also had a provision, I thought Dr. Lewis had said, unless in the sense of, maybe I missed it, in the sense of a budget emergency like we've experienced a few years ago, that this could be lifted by the board if the funds need to be used elsewhere. Wasn't that?
We didn't include that in this policy, but that can sure be a revision that we can do.
Well, I don't mind. Mr. Lee, do you mind? What do you feel about Mrs. Alavi's point to energy is the priority? Please don't take away the uniform things, folks, because we need to be able to help our people have uniforms. But if I don't disagree with you, Mrs. Alavi, if there's not an energy project that can be done, then don't let the money sit there.
Right.
But I think there will always be an energy project that can be done.
Well, I'm just saying possibly.
Yes, ma'am, you're right.
You might consider the fact that this could be used in the classroom to educate our kids on different things connected with energy. And it's not necessarily an energy project, but I'm saying there's a lot of
That's good. No,
things you could use it for.
Great point.
I just don't want to limit it.
Because we do have a teacher that comes from RPU that goes to all of our schools every year. She's funded by our RPU. That's a good idea. This is the first reading. I like the idea that you present.
I just
Mr.
think
Lee.
there's more, maybe needs to be a little more flexible.
Energy education, energy investment.
Mr. Lee, do you have any input?
I was just going to add to Tom's recollection. It's correct. We did discuss adding a clause in there that at the superintendent's discretion, should a need arise that was greater than the funds were designated for, he could temporarily allocate those funds for that crisis. So I'm fine with amending that or making it in addition to.
And I like Mrs. Alavi's, let me speak freely, point about energy education. That's nice too.
I think the hope was just because you can get rebates from these investments that you continue to make those investments, so you can continue to get rebates and continue to make those same investments, rather than at some point in time funds get allocated in a crisis situation to another cause that is equally needed, maybe something in the classroom, and then the funds just keep going that way, and then we'd stop making the investment into those energy improvements.
I understand the goal. I'm just saying that it could be a situation where, I know you say there always will be things to pay.
No, you're
to
right.
spend.
I like the energy education
Okay.
a lot.
So possibly we can work on some language that might
So
expand
if I understand it right, we can maybe reorganize this to read priority for energy savings projects, but not exclusively.
That would be my recommendation. I would wait.
Let's include her idea of energy education because so much of our rebate, Mrs. Alavi and members of the board, was because of the program Dr. Lewis oversaw. Used to be called Energy Ed, I forgot what it's called now. but it's because our teachers and our staff took on energy moves. If we can help our young people understand some of the same things, it just makes for a better community.
Right. I'm just thinking of a myriad of different projects that could be campus-centered that might work on different kinds of energy savings.
We just didn't want the funds spent for professional development.
Oh, well,
that was our point.
I think that those changes could give it enough flexibility where, okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Well, then I think we're going to, since this is a first reading, we won't take a vote on that. And we will allow Dr. Lewis to come back with that, okay? And we are at item H9, the California School Boards Association Delegate Assembly choosing a representative. I sadly had wanted Mrs. Cloud to possibly continue the vote, but she has declined and is stepping down, and we need a representative to take over her term. I would like to nominate Brent Lee to do that. Mr. Hunt?
I'll second it because let me tell you why this is important. The committee, the Adequacy Funding Committee that Ms. Kadish and I are both serve on, Dr. Miller's on it, the CBO of LA Unified. They just got done with the report. I saw it last week when I was up there, and it's very impressive and will be the major, I think, football that CSBA is going to be carrying for a while. The legislature right now feels that we, education, are getting all the money. We've got to build. I used to wonder why I was on the committee, and I found out I was the only political person there. So the suggestion is to have the CTA carry this along with their natural adversary, which are some of those billionaires that are always trying to change education. But both of them have a common goal, is great education in California. And this report will be the focus of the San Diego meeting for the delegates. We should all be getting a copy very soon. In fact, I have one. I'll send it to Dr. Hanson and Beth to get in your packets. Very, very good. Jesus Hoguin has done a great job. But this is what these two delegates, myself and Mr. Lee, if approved here, would be working on your behalf.
Mrs. Cloud, thank you. Mr. Hunt. Mrs. Cloud.
Well, I apologize. Our terms don't quite match up with their terms. And I should have been thinking about this earlier, but it kind of caught me by surprise. And since I did not register for the delegate meeting, I just thought it's probably just time to step aside and let somebody fill that spot. I would just say whoever, if it's Mr. Lee, it is important we have monthly meetings with the delegates from Riverside County. And there are delegate meetings before the School Boards Association meeting in San Diego, which is a day early. And then there's another one in May. And it really is important to attend those meetings because you not only find out what's going on in Riverside County, but you find out what's going on in the state of California. And so I would just say that it is a time commitment.
Thank you. Mr. Lee, are you willing to accept the nomination?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, President Alavi, and thank you, Gail, for those words. Mrs. Alavi did inform me of the time commitment, and I discussed it with my better half and those commitments that I already have, and I'll make sure I make it work, and I'll do my best to serve after you, and it'll be a difficult task.
Well, I'm sure that won't be a problem.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Okay, well then we will all vote for Mr. Lee to take on that Mrs. Cloud's tenure. And that is 4 yes, 1 undecided. Yes, you should. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. And congratulations, Mr. Lee. I know you'll do a great job. Okay, we've now arrived at board members' comments. And Mr. Lee, would you like to start us off tonight?
Sure. I wrote down 3 things. I'll try to make it quick. I was inspired to hear what the Dean of the Graduate School of Education had meant. It was just giving me some ideas on how we can try to better utilize that asset. I'm sure we already utilize that as a feeder program into our hiring process. But seeing in particular their diversity in terms of their students, I was wondering if there's ways that we can better better partner with their school to try to make our district even more diverse in terms of our teachers, and hopefully those teachers that choose to go on into administration, so we can reflect our diverse student population. So I was thinking about ways to do that, maybe a mentorship program. I'm sure there's something in effect, but try to further that mentorship program between teachers and UCR. Maybe some teachers that have some time, I know there's not very many of them, are willing or have a passion for their mentorship, could connect with students from UCR. And also maybe even trying to start that pipeline even earlier and working with organizations like Big Brother, Big Sisters, and encouraging those young students that show a passion for education and being teachers, and starting to mentor them at an early age and getting teachers involved in that process to kind of share what it is to be a teacher and what it takes and what path you need to take. Second thing is more of a note just for Dr. Hanson so I don't forget, is if someone could send me a list on who is participating in the Superintendent Advisory Committee. I don't know which one. Community. Mrs. Alavi and I were at CBU this weekend, and you remember someone made a comment that he made some comments about the advisory committee, so I just would like to get some information about it. And then my last one comment is involving Vocademy. I can't remember if I mentioned this last meeting or not, but I met with Gene Sherman, and he is happy with some of the progress that's been made with RUSD in terms of connecting our students with the programs that Vocademy offers. However, he also shared with me that there's a charter school that moved in adjacent to his building, and in a very short amount of time, according to him and the administration from this charter school, they've seen a high degree of increased attendance from the students who are attending that charter school, because they have a reward system in which students are rewarded with participating in the classes offered by Vocademy. So I would just further encourage our staff to kind of push that relationship forward. I've been on this board next year 2 years, and this is something that I've advocated for since then. I'm sure all of those that are going to be on the ballot tomorrow have heard from their constituents and the community the importance of career technical education and getting our students some hands-on training. So it's what I think our students want, it's what our community expects, and I think being a district of choice, it's a choice that we need to offer, and I don't think we're offering it to the degree that we should. And I think this is a simple way. There's a model that's already there, and even just running a pilot program and allowing X number of kids to participate, I think would be a step in the right direction to see if this is something that we can sustain in the future and is something that we want to invest in long term. I know we're making inroads and having makerspaces at schools, but I think we need something to happen tomorrow, not a year from now, not after the bond is passed or not passed. And it's something in our backyard. Charter schools shouldn't be beating us to the punch. We know this is what we need to do, so we just need to do it. So I just encourage us to do it and find the funds to do so. Gene Sherman seems like a really innovative guy and will be creative with finding solutions to make it work. So let's just sit down at a table, get the people that need to be at the table, and let's sign something up. That's it.
Thank you. Mrs. Cloud.
Just a couple of things. Since it's kind of the end of something anyway, I've been visiting some school sites that are very near and dear to my heart, and I just have to say it's really invigorating to see. We're kind of up here at the 10,000-foot level. When you go to the classroom, you see how policies and things really do affect what goes on in the classroom. And Dr. Fruch met me at one of the schools at Bryant, and we visited Bryant, and that was pretty exciting. And so I just want to thank all of you at the school sites for your hospitality and for the exciting things going on there. And I also will mention, because I will miss attending Lincoln's award ceremony and some of the other exciting things going on in the next few days, because I will be out of town for a week. You know, who knew that during that week all of this would happen? So at the time, I thought, oh, this is kind of an empty week. I'll go now. But there's always things going on that are exciting in RUSD. So there is no good time to leave. So that's all.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hunt.
First of all, I want to compliment whoever ordered the Scarlett O'Hara curtains to come down, and it just brightens up the room. I hope we don't see him as Arlington choir robes anytime soon, but I would do that. Mr. Lee, Mrs. Cloud didn't tell you that all the good things about serving on the committee, because on our monthly meetings, just in case an inquiry reporter would show up, we eat at the strangest, most dull little restaurants you've ever been to. Whenever it's in Riverside, we're at Country Folks, good place. But Gail, that one in Hemet we went to, I advise you, Mr. Lee, you eat at home first and just have a Coke. But it is great meeting with those folks. And in fact, last week, I believe it was last Monday, Mrs. Allaby and Mrs. Cloud and I attended the annual joint meeting of the San Bernardino school boards and the Riverside school boards. And at that meeting, they took the time out in the very beginning to honor two people. One of them, Mrs. Savage. Some of you know Phil Savage here in town. His mom has served on the school board in San Bernardino for, 16 years. And then they also honored our own Gail Cloud. And if you want to hear what was said, come next week, because I'm the one that said it. But I think I said some very nice things.
Well, thank you.
Yes, about Mrs. Cloud, and all of them true. And she was very well, and along with Mrs. Savage, everyone was very pleased with their service. And Gail has been wonderful, particularly on that county level. I like what just something to think about as we go forward, assumptions aside about tomorrow, but it's the culture of a district is what drives so much. And if we're still allowing preference for RUSD employees on campuses, I think that's something we do need to talk about. Because it needs to be debated. And I think what that mother was very brave to come up here tonight, and obviously she was very sincere, and she's asking for the best for her child. To Mr. Martin's comments about testing and assessments, I think that's something, Dr. Hanson, we should be discussing as a board in a workshop in 2016. I think Arnie Duncan has actually been a good education secretary. He obviously recognized a good school at Lake Matthews. So it is something that we should look at. And then two last things quickly. One is that my phone died. I would have read it to you. There was a parent named Mrs. Raven who sent me a copy of her daughter's letter that she sent to Gage principal, Mr. Railer, and I guess there was the vice principal, or the assistant principal was the other person, because she didn't get picked for the leadership retreat. And she wrote a wonderful letter as to why wouldn't you pick me for leadership? And in fact, Mr. Railer, please make sure you introduce her to Dr. Rowe when she gets to Poly, so she can get right in that mainstream. But Mr. Railer, Principal Railer, handled it very well with the young lady. He met with her, and while she doesn't get, I don't think she's going on the retreat, or it's too late to go on the retreat, right? But the mom came away very satisfied with the way her daughter was treated by Mr. Railer, and her opinions and her questions were apparently satisfied and answered. So I want to give a shout out to Mr. Railer. I know that Mr. Martin and I are going to disagree on this because I brought it up before, but you know, our Poly player that was hurt in that game, what was the name of the team we were playing? I forgot now. Was it Murrieta? Rancho Verde. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Rancho Verde's defensive coach is a teacher at Poly because he is one of the ex-head football coaches. There are 3 ex-head football coaches on the Poly staff. And not only does that bother me that, you know, that one of them's a defensive coach for an opposing team with our kids, but the fact that our coach there, because no one wants to leave Poly or King, our coach there can't really bring in his assistants to have jobs on campus. And I just think it's something that, whether it's in negotiations with Mr. Martin next year, or whether it's the superintendent, I believe you have some involuntary transfers you can make. I think it needs to be done. This is a very good teacher when it comes to special ed. I'd say nothing wrong about him. But just the fact in a sport like football that the opposing coach is on the same campus is not good for the morale or anything else that I can think. I can't think of anything good about it. So I hope we will consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Lock-Dawson? No comment? I would like to share with the board a little bit from a conference that I attended on Friday. Jack Clark drew a bunch of attorneys together to talk about special education and what was happening in the legal world. And I wanted to share with you some takeaways that I took from that. It was very enlightening. I was telling Mr. Walker I learned a lot. First, the judges are getting much tougher on districts regarding special education, and they're narrowing definitions for special ed needs. And so the whole atmosphere is getting a little bit, shall we say, heightened. Second, innocent statements in first grade report cards like does not pay attention in class are coming back to haunt districts, as years later they're being sued if they didn't identify learning disabilities early on. And this is something that probably a lot of first graders didn't pay attention in class. It just struck me as something innocent that you might say about a first grader, but now those kinds of things are following, and we need to be very aware, and that would take a lot of teacher education to know about things that they were writing and to think about those kinds of things. Districts are incurring greater and greater legal costs. Judges are listening to outside educational experts over in-school experts, which is not necessarily a good thing. Districts which don't document all the good things they're doing for their students are getting as dinged in court as districts that don't. In other words, you've got to be willing to keep your paperwork up to date about all the good things you're doing so that you can prove it in court. This is interesting. Districts are being held accountable for providing job skills and not just educational programs. So there have been cases lately which they've actually asked, what skills have you sent your special education students out with? Not just that you're providing your educational program, which you can provide, but are you providing job skills? I think that's something that probably people are going to start asking us about regular education too. Or what are we doing to provide job skills, you know? Special ed students have the standard of educational progress which other students are not legally held to yet, which means that when your regular students walk into high school, we expect that they're given a room and a building and the books and the teacher, and we're told, here, you have the right to learn, but we expect the student to do their part, right? Now, when it comes to special education, we're not saying that. We're saying our right is to make that student progress, and if we can't make them progress through, we're not doing their job. We're not doing our job. So it's not a matter of just providing it. We have to show that we're actually making them go down the path. Our responsibility as a district to provide a free and appropriate education, and a parent's honest and sincere request can legitimately be at odds. You know, I was interested in this because this animosity sometimes you have in special education. A parent wants this, the school district says that. You think it's just yes or no, black or white, but it was pointed out more than once that there's so much gray area in the middle, and that we're under a great deal of legal duress to provide this free and appropriate education, and sometimes there can be legitimately reasons why that disagrees. Autism is one of the most complex situations we're dealing with, and we're trying to deal with all the legal issues around it. We are not responsible for true medical needs of a student. We are responsible for educational growth, but where those areas are getting crossing, we're getting grayer and grayer. For instance, they used the example of students who have high anxiety, and the judge is asking the district, what are you doing for this student's anxiety? And some people say, well, that's a medical need, that's a medical thing. And now judges are starting to ask districts, what are you doing to provide for that? Emails and text messages, and this is something we can all learn from. Emails and text messages are part of the professional environment. Unprofessional language in emails can come back in litigation. All communication can be risky if inappropriate comments are made, and it all can end up in court, which I asked whether or not your personal telephone can end up in court. And if they said that if you use your personal telephone to text people about district information, all those texts can be used in court in litigation, which I didn't know. So, I mean, it's just something to be aware of. And then finally, we, the school districts, do not do a good job of explaining what we do and the good that we provide. Non-public schools can shout to the world that they can cure autism and get away with it, right? If you're a non-public school, you can say you've got all kinds of special programs that do this, that, and the other. But we're doing a very bad job of saying what we do, and we're professionals. It was encouraged to us over and over during this conference that we take more pains to explain the strengths and expertise that we offer in special education, which is sometimes overlooked. So I thought I'd just share those little nuggets with you. In closing, I would like to adjourn in memory of Diane Roebuck, who passed away on October 18th. She was a teacher at High Grove Elementary School. For John Jack Bourbonnais, who passed away on October 20th. He worked as a painter for RUSD for 33 years. And Paul Painter, who passed away on October 3rd, and he worked in RUSD for 34 years, was a teacher, a counselor, a school administrator, and finally retired from RUSD as an assistant superintendent for human resources. And I close in their honor. Thank you. Yeah, it was really